Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in the finale of the Transformers were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 19, Seaside Battle. If there was one thing that Izuku Midoriya knew about All Might, that being a lot, it was the fact that the number one hero had a penchant for epic, unexpected entrances. 1 minute, he wouldn't be there, and then the other, you heard the words, I am here. And indeed, there he was. It had happened during the USJ just the day before, and now, it was happening here at the shipyard with everyone present. Needless to say, Izuku was properly hyped up for it. Ahaha. The Quirk inheritor cheered as he raised his fists up into the air. Yes, All Might's here to help. There was a bit of a pause as Izuku stood there awkwardly, feeling multiple sets of eyes upon him. He slowly turned his head to see the girls all staring at him, with Mei and Momo wearing neutral faces while Kyoka smirked in amusement. Izuku cleared his throat, trying to play off the fact that he had just embarrassed himself. Ahem, sorry. Kyoka nudged him with her elbow. Ah, it's okay, broccoli boy. Honestly, I can't blame ya. She cupped her hands around her mouth and hollered, kick their skid plates, All Might. Momo quickly joined in as well. Give them a throttling they'll never forget. Yeah, Mei shouted in support. Pull out their crankshafts and make 'em eat them. That last statement managed to stun all of the Cybertronians there, astonishment written across Shatter and Dropkick's faces while Optimus' optics widened all the way. Bumblebee's jaw fell open so far that his mouthguard nearly popped off and Windblade let out an audible gasp. Whoa, Mei, we don't have to go that far. Shatter quickly shook off her shocked state before glaring up at All Might. This, organic hero. He had just effortlessly stopped their transmission from going up into space. Their only energon power source was destroyed, and there was no way of knowing where they could find another. No, Shatter's fists clenched in ire. He had to pay. No. She quickly snapped her arm up and aimed for the tower, getting Optimus' attention. Shatter. The Autobot leader went to tackle her. No. But it was too late. By the time Prime brought Shatter down, she had taken the shot, the energy blast heading straight for All Might. Up on the tower, the symbol of peace gazed down as the blast drew closer and closer, before giving a shrug. Well, I suppose I should have seen this coming. In one single leap, All Might jumped from the tower and up high into the air, only to redirect himself to come falling down to the ground below, headed straight for Dropkick. He crossed his arms over his face and yelled, Carolina. Oh no you don't. Dropkick went to aim his gun at All Might, only for both Windblade and Bumblebee to each grab one of his arms, taking him by surprise. Wait, what the? Not this time. Windblade denied, just as All Might closed the distance. SMAAAASH. Just as he made impact, All Might swiped his arms across Dropkick's chest, the impact of which caused the Decepticon to let out a pained yell before being sent flying back into a building. However, neither Windblade or Bumblebee were prepared for such power, so they were sent tumbling forward as well, losing their grip on Dropkick's arms. All Might landed between them and sent them a salute. Apologies, Windblade, Bumblebee. If I had time to warn you that would happen, I would have. Bumblebee let out a groaning buzz while Windblade waved her hand to the hero, while her face was planted on the pavement. Oh, it's no problem, All Might, she muffled out. We probably should have known better. Meanwhile, Optimus and Shatter had returned to fighting as well, the Autobot leader kicking her gun out of her hand with a spinning kick before pulling out his ion rifle and blasting her in the shoulder. Blam! Gah! Shatter clenched anew in her shoulder as Prime continued to fire at her, causing her to run. Fortunately, she could still transform, so she converted into her VTOL aircraft mode and flew off, rounding about the shipyard to reconvene with Dropkick, if he was still conscious. Prime narrowed his eyes at the flying femme before quickly rushing over to the other Autobots, along with All Might, who was standing with his hands on his hips. Is everyone alright here? He asked as his optics shifted between the two bots. Windblade. B-127. We're fine, Optimus. Windblade smiled, shaking her head in slight disbelief. But by the Maker, it's so good to see you again. HM, it's good to see both of you as well. Optimus agreed before his sights then went to All Might, the hero grinning up at him with his signature smile. I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, though I do not know exactly who I'm addressing. What is your name, hero? All Might threw his head back and laughed. Ah ha ha. He jerked a thumb at himself and said, who, me? I am All Might, the #1 hero of this world. He then gave a thumbs up toward Prime. And you must be the great Optimus Prime. You've probably already met my protege, young Midoriya, as well as my charges, young Jiro, Hatsume and Yaoyorozu. He extended his hand up to the big bot. It is an absolute pleasure to meet you in person. To say that Optimus was taken aback was accurate. Never before had he met someone with such bravado, well, aside from Sky Lynx, but All Might definitely didn't have the ego to match. Optimus extended his pointer finger and shook All Might's hand, giving him a nod. It is a true honor to meet you as well, All Might. Your charges and protege have been a massive help to not only me, but to all of us. Indeed so, All Might affirmed as he craned his head to see that Izuku and the others were still at a safe distance. Though I do wonder how you and they were able to get here so fast, he said as he tapped his chin. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Windblade shifted her optics over to Optimus in curiosity. Optimus, how in the world were you able to come here, through a space bridge? All Might raised a brow at that. Space bridge. What's that? Prime set his optics down to All Might and explained, it is a piece of Cybertronian technology that allows us to create portals through transwarp space to essentially teleport us across great distances, including through space itself. He set his attention back to Windblade. As for how we were able to come through it, as it happened, Sector 7 had a functioning ground bridge in their hangar that we were able to get up and running properly. Both Windblade and Bumblebee were stunned to hear the news, to say the least. Wow, really? The city speaker shook her head and let out a breath. Woo, well, that was unexpected. Indeed, but most fortuitous. Optimus craned his head up to the Decepticons, with Shatter having transformed while Dropkick worked his way out of the rubble of the building that came crashing down onto his head. Because now, we outnumber the Decepticons 3-2, and with their transmission device having been deactivated, that puts us at a clear advantage. He gave All Might a nod. Thank you for that, by the way. Not a problem. All Might saluted. However, I think you may want to do another head count. Because from the way I see it, it's 4-on-2. He slammed a fist into his palm and eagerly smiled toward the Decepticons. Now, what say we bust some Decepti-chops? Once again, Optimus' optics widened. Really? You are certain of this, All Might? Prime, he just punched Dropkick into a building. Windblade reminded. I think he can take the cons on. At that, Prime let out a chuckle. HM, ah, yes, silly me for forgetting so soon. He bowed his head toward the symbol of peace and gratitude. I would greatly appreciate your help in this endeavor, All Might. Thank you. All Might gave him a thumbs up. Of course, I am quite honored to share the battlefield with you. He shifted his sights over to Izuku and the girls, the four of them waving toward them. Just so long as they stay out of the fight, of course. The last thing I want to see is any of them getting hurt. Of course. Optimus craned his head up toward the teenagers and gave them a single nod and a serious gaze. Immediately, the quartet got the picture and they began to head away from the battleground, leaving the four to face off with the Decepticons, who were not in a good mood at all. Grah! Dropkick shoved off the last big piece of rubble that was on him and let out a primal growl, flailing his arms around as he roared, that's it. I've had it up to here with these fragging organics. He pulled out his sword and glowered to All Might, pointing the blade at the hero. First, I'm going to knock out all of his teeth, ruining that damn smile. And then, I'm gonna make him watch as I rip those Primus Forsaken children to ribbons. Oh, trust me, my comrade, I am going to take great satisfaction in this as well. Shatter affirmed as she clenched her fists. If I may, though, please, allow me to finish the hero's life. He has rendered our transmission useless, and for that, he must pay dearly. Overhearing their conversation, Optimus quickly tried to de-escalate the situation. Shatter, Dropkick, this conflict is meaningless. He gestured all around him. Look at this planet. Our war does not need to come here, especially when it is inhabited with creatures who are innocent in all of this. Please, do not do this. Do not bring the Decepticons here. Shatter sneered in disgust. And simply let you Autobot scum go free. Not a chance. She swiped her arm in front of her to emphasize her point. We have spent 300 stellar cycles hunting for you, and we are not about to stop now that we're so close. And if you insist on getting in our way, Shatter pulled out her hand cannon, preparing herself for battle. Then we will just have to kill you where you stand. Optimus closed his optics, sighing with reluctance and disappointment. Very well, if that is how it must be done. Autobots, prepare for battle. The Autobots all got into combat stances, along with All Might, who was raring to go. Windblade glanced toward her leader and asked, Optimus, how do you want to go about this? There was a bit of a pause as Optimus thought it over, before finally giving them his answer. If Shatter and Dropkick can find more energon, then they can activate their transmitter again. But, that is only if they are allowed to escape. If we had stasis cuffs on us, that would not be a problem, but we do not. With reluctance in his voice, Prime let out another heavy sigh. Shatter and Dropkick must not be allowed to get that transmission to Cybertron. We must stop them, no matter the cost. This answer surprised All Might a bit, but he could still see the reason why, and he could hear in Optimus' voice that this decision didn't come easy. Well then, I suppose this is something we shouldn't take lightly. All Might said as prepared himself for battle. Given the stakes, though, I should not have expected anything less. Windblade had a feeling that would be the answer, but she knew that Optimus didn't make these kinds of decisions lightly. Still, they all knew what would be at stake if they let Shatter and Dropkick go, and that was something that couldn't happen. Windblade took out Stormfall and activated the blade, with Bumblebee pulling out his stingers next to her. Right. B and I will take on Shatter. We have unfinished business with her. And I suppose that means that you and I will take on Dropkick. All Might concluded, glancing toward Optimus. Indeed. Optimus Prime raised his fists, ready to go back into battle. We must save this planet, so let's give it our all. Autobots, engage. With a battle cry from Windblade and a buzz from Bumblebee, the four warriors charged into the fray, with Shatter and Dropkick doing the same as well. As they ran, however, Optimus glances over to All Might, who was keeping pace with his strides. Are you prepared for what we have to do? All Might pursed his lips at that. In his entire hero career, he had never taken another being's life. However, he also realized that at this moment, he had just gotten caught up in a war. And in war, things were not so cut and dry. With a risk this high, he needed to step up and keep the Earth safe. He looked Prime in the optics before answering, if it will save my planet and my people, then I am willing to do whatever it takes. He clenched a fist and hollered, now, let's go beyond. Plus Ultra. Back with the teens, they had just gotten away from the battle, staying behind another large building to stay out of sight of the Decepticons that no doubt wanted to hurt them. And given what Dropkick had said, they made sure that they weren't seen at all. Okay, I think we're in the clear. Kyoka concluded as the group all sat in a circle, the girls keeping their eyes focused on each other while Izuku's gaze was toward the ground. Kyoka glanced through a nearby alleyway to see the Autobots and All Might engaging the Decepticons, with Prime and the number one hero practically tackling Dropkick. Ooh, yeah, this is probably gonna be one hell of a fight. Momo nodded her head, her arms wrapped around her legs. Seems like it. Too bad we can't see it without getting near it. May sighed and lowered her head. If only I had brought baby number 33 with us, we would have been able to watch. My Sky Spy would have come in super handy right about now. Well, better to be safe than sorry, I suppose. Kyoka shrugged, settling herself down once again. I mean, would you guys wanna get caught up in all that? Better to just stick back here and wait for it to be over. The punk rocker trailed off when she saw Izuku with an intense expression on his face, almost as if he were thinking over something in his head. Kyoka raised a brow toward him and nudged him with her elbow. Yo, celery stick, what's on your mind there? Izuku swallowed his fear and wore a determined face as he stood up, balling one of his hands into a fist. We need to find some way to help them. The three girls stared at Izuku incredulously at what he just said, all before letting out a simultaneous, what? Kyoka shot up and grabbed onto the boy's shoulder. Izuku, I mean this in the kindest way possible, but are you insane? She snapped her arm over toward the battle that was happening. You wanna go out there and risk your neck in a fight with robots who are at least 6 times larger than you? No, out of the question, not happening. Izuku, however, shook his head. And no, that's not what I'm saying at all, Kyoka, he denied. What I mean is, we should find some way to help them without G getting directly involved. He set his sights out to the two other girls as well, remaining steadfast in his decision. I know it's risky, but we've been along on this ride with Bumblebee A and the other Autobots up to this moment, the least we can do is give them a bit more support. Midoriya, I appreciate where you're coming from here, Momo said with a sympathetic face. But you also need to realize there's really no easy way of doing what you're suggesting. We have no means of helping them without getting up close and personal. No ranged weapons or anything. The raven-haired beauty shook her head. I'm sorry, but there's just no reasonable way. Well, maybe not reasonable. Izuku, Kyoka and Momo were surprised when they heard Mei say that, the three all facing her. Mei stood up and walked over to a large shelving unit that was right next to the building, reaching up to sift through the junk that was on the shelves. But, that doesn't mean we can't come up with a way to help. That's a bit unreasonable. Kyoka deadpanned at that and facepalmed. Mei, just what the hell do you have planned this time? Just you wait and see, Jackie. Mei pulled off a long, cylindrical piece of metal from the shelving unit, one that was open on one end and closed on the other. I think I can jury-ring something out of this little thing. She placed it over her shoulder and closed one eye, holding it as if it were a bazooka. All I need are a few things: gunpowder, a fuse, an artillery shell, an explosive, some wires, a flame, and some duct tape. Izuku was stunned at the idea, but he also kind of liked it. I like the way you're thinking, Hatsume. Well, damn, Kyoka muttered. I'll admit, I also kinda like the sound of it. A smirk came to the punk rocker's face. If you think we can make something big out of that, Mei, then I say let's go for it. Momo, however, crossed her arms at the idea. Guys. I think you're forgetting something important, namely the fact that we have none of the things she needs to get something like that jury-rigged. How are we supposed to get all of that? But then, Momo was taken aback when all eyes landed on her, staring at her as if she held the solution to all their problems. What? What are you guys? Oh. Momo blinked in realization before going to lift her shirt, with Izuku quick to look away. Fine, let's get started. Back out with the battle, Optimus and All Might collided with Dropkick simultaneously, the duo pushing the blue Decepticon back with all the strength they had. All Might then pushed back in order to get onto his feet, with Optimus continuing the push as he and Dropkick locked their arms around their shoulders and began struggling against one another. As they did this, Prime began hammering shots against Dropkick, slowly but surely taking the Khan's defenses down while pushing him back. Then, Optimus kneed Dropkick in the abdomen before tossing the Khan away, only for him to roll along the ground and land in a crouch. All Might watched this and couldn't help but be surprised by the Autobot leader's fighting style. He fights like a professional wrestler. Who would have guessed? All Might, Optimus shouted before catching a punch from Dropkick, using his arm to lock the blue Khan's arm in his own. Heads up. Prime then lifted his arm and performed a deep arm drag on Dropkick, sending him tumbling toward the pro-hero. On it, All Might called back before rearing his fist back and shouting, SMAAASH. He punched the rolling Decepticon with a stiff right hook, catching him right in the gut. The impact was so hard that All Might swore that he could see Dropkick's optics almost pop out of his head as he went flying back toward Optimus. Gow! Dropkick roared in pain and anger as he spun toward Prime, but then an idea entered his head, remembering what the yellow bug had done earlier. He transformed into his armor car mode, catching Prime off guard and causing him to get smacked by the incoming vehicle. After that, Dropkick transformed into helicopter mode in midair and laughed. MHA. Eat grease, Prime. With that, his double-barreled cannon transformed out from underneath his canopy and began firing at the Autobot leader, who rolled out of the way just in time. All Might also dodged the attack before leaping up onto one of the buildings, angling himself so that he was to the side of Dropkick. Oh no, you don't. The hero pumped his legs and jumped, reaching out his arms and grabbing onto Dropkick's tail boom. The force of the jump was so great that it made Dropkick forcibly begin to descend toward the ground. We're not having any of that. Ow. Pesky organic hero. Dropkick growled, transforming so that he could roll into the impact. With All Might now on his leg, the Decepticon began to intentionally tumble across the concrete in hopes of shaking the hero off. Still, All Might remained persistent, and when Dropkick jumped to his feet, he began kicking All Might into the side of a building, which proved to not be good. Why won't you get off? Between getting his back hammering into a brick wall and him holding onto the leg while being kicked into it, Dropkick's actions were really aggravating All Might's wound. The hero kept his smile, but visibly winced with every strike. Gah, oof, Optimus. A little help, please. Thankfully, his request was met when he saw a pair of blue hands grasp Dropkick by the shoulders and spin him around, with All Might letting go just in time for Optimus to start laying in some heavy elbow strikes onto Dropkick's face. Finally, the Prime punched Dropkick square in the jaw with his fist, sending him staggering back. All Might let out a few breaths and gave Optimus a thumbs up. Thanks for the assist. You're welcome. Optimus nodded back. But that was a rather foolhardy decision, don't you think? Sometimes, crazy works. All Might shrugged, only for his eyes to widen suddenly. But never mind that. Watch out. Graw. But it was too late. Dropkick tacked Prime to the floor and began punching and kicking with erratic behavior, a crazed gleam in his blood-red gaze. He pinned Prime to the ground and reached for his face. Prime, I'll rip out your optics, oof. At that moment, a sharp pain went up Dropkick's back, leading him to turn his head to see All Might perched there. I don't think so. All Might wrenched back on Dropkick's propeller blades, forcing the Decepticon to arch his back and get off of Prime. Optimus, this is your chance, take it. Optimus instantly got up and took hold of Dropkick, calling to All Might. All right, get off now. All Might nodded and shot off of Dropkick immediately, with Prime lifting up the con over his head. He kneeled down and bent one leg forward before bringing Dropkick down, slamming the con down over his knee in a backbreaker. This elicited a yell from Dropkick, his back now in even more pain than before. Optimus then stood up, propped Dropkick onto his feet, and then booted him in the back, sending the con down face first into the concrete. Ha ha, excellent. All Might cheered. Now, it is time to end this. Optimus' hand retracted into his arm, and from out of it, an orange, glowing energy axe weapon came out. I'm sorry, Dropkick, Optimus spoke as he took heavy steps toward the fallen con. But I cannot allow you to bring any more Decepticons to this plan. Without warning, Dropkick suddenly spun around with his sword in hand, slashing Optimus cleanly across the chest. Prime. All Might clenched his teeth as Dropkick kicked up onto his feet, swinging his sword at Prime again. Optimus was able to block this strike with his axe, though, but almost immediately, Dropkick did a pump kick to Prime's abdominal area, making the Autobot double over. The con then slammed Prime in the back of the head with the butt of his sword, chortling in amusement as the commander landed on the cold ground. You're not the only one with a blade, Prime. Dropkick said before pulling out his double-barreled blaster, pointing it at Optimus' head. But I think I'm done playing now. New Hampshire, SMAAAASH. All of a sudden, All Might came right out of nowhere, having propelling himself back first toward the action by punching the air. He collided right with Dropkick's hand cannon, causing it to be knocked out of the con's hand while also crumpling from All Might's impact. All Might did a flip and landed on the ground, using his hand for support. Optimus, get up. Dropkick's optic twitched in ire. That's it. He spun around and charged at All Might with his sword raised. I've had enough of rag. But just as Dropkick was about to close the distance, Optimus got onto his feet and delivered a hard and fast spear to Dropkick, slamming shoulder first into the con's midsection so hard that it caused them to both go tumbling down into a nearby dry dock. Once both combatants made it to the bottom, they began going at one another once again, matching blow for blow as Dropkick's frustration kept growing. Will you just stay down? Not a chance. Optimus bluntly said before catching one of Dropkick's punches in his hand and twisting the fist, causing sparks to fly from Dropkick's wrist. Gah, clang, rag. Another sharp pain shot up the back of Dropkick's knee all of a sudden, his optics snapping down to see All Might with a large pipe in his hand. He reached down to grab him, but All Might just jumped up and slammed Dropkick in the back with the pipe, making him double over. This allowed Optimus to spin Dropkick around, hook his arms around him, and then perform a massive suplex, slamming Dropkick head first into the ground. All Might couldn't help but chuckle as he threw the pipe away. Hee hee, fan of suplexes, So am I. Optimus got out from underneath dropkick and faced the pro hero. Perhaps we can discuss fighting techniques later. Right now, we need to, clang. Graw. The Prime was immediately cut off when dropkick delivered another boot to Optimus' face, making him fall right onto his back. Dropkick wasted no time in charging at Optimus, but the Autobot immediately countered by raising his legs up and hooking them around Dropkick's head, performing a leg toss on the con. But Dropkick, without missing a beat, transformed into his armor car mode and drove up the side of the dry dock before transforming again into his helicopter mode, spinning around to face his opponents as he brought out 2 Gatling guns from his sides. Frag all of you. With that, he began unloading all of the ammo he had on the duo, with Optimus and All Might forced to take cover behind a large, metal crate. Prime made sure that the hero was sufficiently covered as bullets ricocheted off the crate, his optics peeking out from behind it to get a view of Dropkick. Alright, we need a plan to ground him, and bring him down completely, he pondered before facing All Might. Any suggestions? Good question. All Might thought about it for a moment before spying something not too far away, an anchor attached to a long chain. He glanced back to Dropkick before a plan formulated in his head. I have something, but it's pretty bold. And I am willing to listen. Prime affirmed before All Might relayed his plan, the bot giving a small nod. I think this may just work. Optimus reached for the anchor and held it securely in his hand. I am ready whenever you are. Good. Because now is as good a time as ever. All Might jumped up and over the crate while Optimus rushed out from behind it, the Autobot leader swinging the anchor around. All Might then pulled his fist back, keeping his focus right on Dropkick. Nebraska, the hero threw his punch, all while rotating his arm to generate a powerful tornado. SMAAASH. The tornado quickly began to whip up against Dropkick, his rotors spinning against the direction of the wind and causing him to veer downward. At the same time, Optimus waited until Dropkick was close enough to the ground and tossed the anchor up toward the con's rotor, the chain quickly getting caught up in it. This caused Dropkick to transform, but this would prove to be a huge mistake. As he transformed, the chain just kept getting caught in places all over his body. Around his neck, in his arms, across his body, through his legs, and what made it worse was that his armor plating was keeping the chains in place. In the end, Dropkick was essentially wrapped up entirely in the chains, glaring at the 2 across from him. You think these little chains can hold? Now, All Might hollered as he grabbed onto the chain as well. Pull. At his word, he and Optimus both yanked on the chain with all the strength they could muster, and the result was near instantaneous. Dropkick let out a rather pained, "URK." Before every part of him began to pop off, the chain forcibly doing so. First came his arms, and then the moment his torso began to twist beyond its limits, he blew up, his parts scattering all over the place before his waist and legs were all that were left intact. Prime and All Might breathed hard as Dropkick's parts fell all around them, with the cons decapitated, on fire head rolling over right to them. With one glance at the head and a heavy sigh of relief, All Might tossed the chain over to the head. Goodbye, and good riddance. Optimus hummed as he also dropped the chain, shaking his head solemnly. Had Shatter and Dropkick strayed from Megatron's orders, we may not have to have done what we did. All Might's smile faltered at that, the man setting a hand onto Optimus' leg. I know. I took no satisfaction in doing this, just as you had. But, I suppose that is what happens in war, isn't it? Indeed, unfortunately so. Optimus confirmed. I have seen many friends die over the course of this war, All Might, and I have seen many Decepticons lose their own lives as well. He placed a hand to his helm and closed his optics. And, it never gets any easier. I know, I've seen my fair share of death as well. All Might continued. I have never taken the life of a criminal though, so this is a first for me. The symbol of peace took a steady breath before saluting back up to Optimus. But what's done is done, so there's no use dwelling on it now. Besides, we have other business to attend to. Optimus let out a heavy sigh and nodded in agreement. You're right, All Might. Let's, Optimus cut himself off when he saw movement up near the edge of the dry dock, his optics zooming in on just what was going on. When he saw what it was, though, his optics widened immediately. The children. What? All Might snapped his head around just in time to see Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo, the tops of their heads only just visible over the edge of the dry dock as they ran past. Mei and Izuku also appeared to be carrying something rather long and large over their shoulders, catching the duo's attention rather quickly. "Kids, what in the world are you?" "Sorry, All Might," Izuku shouted back. "If it makes ya feel better, we're not gonna get involved, at least not directly." Kyoka added. Hey, we're gonna blow that fem sky high." Mei cackled as their voices began to fade. This only left Optimus and All Might even more confused than they had been, the two left utterly perplexed. "Every moment I've been online on this planet, I've only been left more and more surprised by your species' tenacity," Optimus commented. All Might facepalmed at that. "Yes, but the tenacity comes with a bit of foolishness as well, especially in the kids these days. Come on, we should stop them before they blow someone's head off." As All Might and Optimus were having their battle with Dropkick, Windblade and Bumblebee were having their own scuffle with Shatter, the latter putting practically everything she had in the fight with brutal efficiency. The two Autobots could tell that the Decepticon Huntress was at the end of her rope, and they sure as heck knew that they needed to stop her before she eviscerated them. As Windblade went for a strike with her Stormfall sword, Shatter caught it between her hands and shoved the other femme away, only to get blindsided by Bumblebee, his stingers stabbing her right in the back. "Gah, you little bug." She reached around to grab at Bumblebee, only for him to pull himself up over her shoulders by her wings, flipping over her before kicking her straight in the head. "Ow." Shatter staggered back, only to pull out her hand cannon to take aim at B. "I have had enough of your interference, B-127. She pulled the trigger and fired a blast of energy at the yellow mech, only for Windblade to jump in and bring Stormfall down, slicing the energy blast and causing it to fly off in different directions. The resulting impacts caused small explosions, and Windblade glared up to Shatter with her metallic teeth clenched. "His name is Bumblebee." The city speaker's VTOL fans spun rapidly and sent a blast of wind at Shatter, causing her to stagger back once more. "Grr, does it look like I care what his name is?" Shatter belted out as she transformed into her armored dune buggy mode. "Because I'm going to reduce to both to molten sludge no matter what he calls himself." Her tires screeched along the ground as she sped toward the duo, her cannon popping out of her roof and taking aim at them. "Now die." Shatter began firing off multiple blasts from her gun emplacement, which was all Windblade needed to shout, "Scatter." And with that, Bumblebee followed her lead and dove off to one side while she went another, leaving Shatter to plow through where they once stood. B took this opportunity to bring both of his stingers together and aim for Shatter, sending one large bolt of electricity her way. The bolt collided and immediately sent Shatter off course, the sparks crackling across her body as she skidded along the pavement. She eventually flipped over and was forced to transform to robot mode, landing on her back with a massive clatter. "Rog." Shatter immediately sat up and got to her feet, slamming her fist into the ground in utter frustration. "Why won't you die?" Across the way, Windblade could swear her audio receptors were picking up Dropkick saying something similar, causing her to smirk. "Wow, you two really are on the same page." Windblade drew Stormfall once again and made a "come at me" gesture with her hand. "But that's not going to help you, now is it?" "Grah." With another angry roar, Shatter charged at Windblade and retracted her hand into her arm, bringing forth a purple energy lance from her wrist. "Windblade, I am going to run you through." But at that moment, Windblade picked up a sparking sound from her left and spun around, her lance moving with her as it absorbed the bolt of electricity that Bumblebee sent at her. An evil chuckle escaped Shatter's lips. Apologies, B-127, but I am not about to fall for the same trick twice." "ZRKT, are you, now?" Bumblebee asked through his radio before pointing at her. "ZRKT, well then, may I introduce you to ZRKT, a friend I know named ZRTK, distraction." Shatter's optics shot open immediately. What? Schnacked. "Ah." The femme cried out as Windblade's sword plunged deep into one of Shatter's VTOL fans, stabbing straight through it and causing sparks and fluid to come out of it. This, understandably, didn't sit well with Shatter at all. "Gah, Windblade." Shatter shook the other red femme off of her before charging at her with her lance. "I will destroy you." Windblade caught the lance with her sword, all while remaining low to the ground. Yeah, I don't think so. With Shatter's momentum still carrying her, Windblade lowered herself down further and kicked upward, sending Shatter up and over her with ease. The Khan was sent tumbling down into one of the dry docks, and much to Windblade's surprise, Bumblebee followed her down immediately. Wait, we have to stick together. Bumblebee, however, was already at the bottom of the dry dock, his stingers at the ready to keep the pressure on. He knew that if they didn't let up, it might allow Shatter a chance to get away, and they couldn't risk that. He charged right at Shatter, and immediately regretted it as the femme shot up to her feet and kicked Bumblebee down, stepping on him with her heel. Ha ha ha, finally. Shatter laughed before picking Bumblebee up and tossing him to the side. I was hoping that one of you would make a mistake. Bumblebee went to stab her with his stinger, but that ultimately proved to be an error as well as she took his arm, bent it away from her, and then stabbed him with his own stinger, a pained buzz escaping Bee's throat as the electricity jolted through him. Ah, now this is more like it. Shatter craned her head up to see Windblade standing at the edge of the dry dock, to which Shatter pulled out her gun again. But before she could fire, Bumblebee recovered and came back hard, jumping up and wrapping his legs around Shatter's head while hooking an arm around her leg. Using his weight, he pulled her down to the ground with him and began beating on her head, only for her to immediately stop him by grabbing onto his arm. Shatter tossed Bee over her and she got to her feet, only for a familiar sound to grace her audio receptors. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Shatter snapped her head around in time to see Windblade come flying straight at her. Knowing that her flight mode was useless at the moment with her bad wing, she had no choice but to meet Windblade head-on. Shatter charged forward with her hands raised and grabbed onto Windblade by her wings, planting her feet to make sure she wasn't driven back. You know, Windblade, hey, in a different life, you would have made a fine Decepticon with all the sneak attacks you do. Shatter mused. Dream on. Windblade transformed and booted Shatter in the chest, only for the Khan to come back immediately with a hard strike of her own to Windblade's neck area. The stiff chop was so hard that it sent Windblade down immediately, to which Shatter kicked the city speaker away as hard as she could before blasting her right in the back. Yeah, Windblade cried out as she sprawled onto the ground, her back smoking from where Shatter's blast connected. She struggled to get back to her feet, but at the moment, the pain was just too intense. Shatter loomed over Windblade with her gun pointed right at her face, a satisfied smirk on the Khan's lips. Do it, then. Finish me. Oh, I plan to. Shatter's optics moved over to Bumblebee, who was also struggling to get up. But first, I think it's time I finish what I came here to do in the first place. She kicked Windblade aside, eliciting a pained yell from her before moving over to the struggling Bumblebee. She stopped on the yellow mech's back, a sharp buzz escaping his throat as Shatter aimed her weapon at his head. B-127, it's time for you to pay the price for your transgressions. Not happening, lady. The sudden shout caused all three bots to snap their heads up to the dry dock's edge, and there, they saw Kyoka, Momo, Izuku and Mei all looking down at them, the latter two carrying a long, metal pipe that appeared to be heavily modified into something. The Cybertronians couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it appeared to be held together by duct tape, sticky tack, and a prayer, with a makeshift handle on the bottom if it while a fuse was sticking out the back. You're not killing our friends today. Kyoka continued, and we're here to make sure of that. Windblade immediately panicked at the sight, though she couldn't muster up enough strength to get up. Kids. Gah. Get out of here. Sorry, Windblade, Momo said, though she appeared to be quite exhausted. But we've come this far. She then placed a hand on the tube, and I didn't create all of this stuff to jury ring this thing together for nothing. We're helping you out, and that's that. Shatter threw her head back and laughed in amusement. Ahahaha. Oh really? And what exactly do you think that mess of a thing can do? As the femme laughed, though, Mei furrowed her brow at the Decepticon, her confidence showing in her face. Oh, you'll find out. He turned her head to Izuku and called out, ready, muscles. On standby. Izuku said as he took a single match out of his pocket, which Momo had also created. The greenette bent down and scrapped the match across the concrete, lighting it up before bringing it right to the fuse. The small string lit up and immediately, Izuku tossed the match away, with him, Kyoka and Momo all diving to the side. Duck and cover. Ahahaha. May laughed as she took aim at Shatter. Fire in the hole. And just like that, blam. The back end of the large pipe exploded and a huge blast shot out of its front, the projectile flying straight toward Shatter as May threw the flaming weapon away. Shatter's optics widened in shock as she saw an artillery shell come flying toward her and she started to move, but it was too late. The projectile was just too fast and she didn't have enough time. The shell embedded itself into her right shoulder, and the moment it made contact, boom. It blew up, and Shatter let out a howling scream. Ah GGH. The Decepticon fell to the floor, and then her arm and right wing followed soon after. She was still alive, but she was down a limb, and now, she couldn't transform, period. The sight of this was enough for the teenagers to start cheering. Their plan had worked, and both Windblade and Bumblebee were left shocked at what they saw. These kids just keep on surprising me. Windblade muttered to herself. Ha ha ha. Yes. Kyoka laughed as she high-fived everyone. It actually freaking worked. Momo ran a hand through her hair in disbelief. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if it would work, but I'm so glad it did. She turned to May and gave her a big smile. That was very impressive, Hatsume. I'm sorry that I ever doubted you. It's okay. May waved off. We did what we wanted to do, so in the end, that's all that matters. Why yeah, agreed. Izuku nodded as he turned his head back down into the dry dock. And now, oh no. Izuku's face suddenly became quite pale, and all of the girls followed his line of sight to see why. They immediately regretted that decision. Because down in the dry dock, Shatter was giving them the most spiteful, hate-filled glare that they had ever seen, her unbridled rage now plain as day. Her plan was coming apart at the seams already, and now a bunch of organic children had actually managed to damage her this badly. This would not go unpunished. You. Shatter scrambled to pick her gun up and began charging straight for the teenagers, only for Bumblebee to trip her up with his legs. The yellow bot leapt onto her back and began pummeling at her injured area, only for Shatter to flip over and land directly on Bumblebee, quickly taking control. She tossed her gun away and began pummeling him with one hand, screaming in rage all the while. Shatter glared hard at Bumblebee and got right into his face. After I kill you, she reached for a nearby metal spike and raised it above her head. I kill them next. Bumblebee. Izuku screamed. Get out of there. Kyoka shouted. But there was really no other place Bumblebee could go. So, he decided to settle for the next best thing. He raised his arms and activated one of his stingers, putting every ounce of electrical energy he had into one single blast. But rather than hitting Shatter, the bolt sailed right past her and shot directly into the dry dock's wall, immediately blowing it up and starting a massive fire. Shatter laughed once again at the bug's futile attempt at fighting back. Ha ha ha, you missed. ZRKT, didn't I? Bumblebee countered through his radio. Hearing these words, Shatter's optics moved back around, and widened at what she saw next. The dry dock's wall was giving way to all of the water behind it as well as a massive cargo ship. And soon enough, the entire place was flooding in. The Decepticon stood up to get out of the way, letting go of her makeshift weapon. But as she did, Bumblebee kicked her right in the back, bringing her to her knees and hooking an arm around her neck to keep her in place. Gah, you fool! Shatter snapped. You'll kill us all. Don't. Windblade reached out desperately, having finally worked her way back up to her legs, only to be swept away in the blink of an eye by a blue, white and red blur. Much to her shock, All Might was carrying her as he leapt through the air, the duo moving up to ground level. Wah, All Might. Just hold on, Windblade. All Might reassured, carrying Windblade over his shoulders. We'll get Bumblebee out of there before you know it. Windblade was about to protest, when she saw a certain figure running along the dry dock's edge as fast as he could, much to the protests of the three girls who were calling out to him as well as Optimus Prime. She let out a gasp and pointed just as she and All Might landed. Wait, look, Izuku. Huh. All Might whipped his head around just in time to see his protege jumping off the side of the dry dock as hard as he could, the boy's face concentrated right down onto Bumblebee. Young Midoriya, what are you? Get out of there, now. Bumblebee snapped his head up at Izuku's voice and met his eyes, and the yellow mech could tell that the greenette had a plan. B gave Shatter one last shot to the back before sprinting to the side of the dry dock as fast as he could, but Shatter was still right on his heels. And this was where Izuku put his plan into motion. Just as B began to scramble up the side of the dry dock, he put his thumb and middle finger together and aimed his hand directly at Shatter. He then focused one for all into his hand, specifically in his middle finger, which began to glow with red energy. On the other end of the dry dock, however, Optimus couldn't believe what he was seeing. "What in the world is he doing?" he exclaimed. As she saw this, Kyoka couldn't help but smile. She knew that Izuku would go to great lengths to help someone, and right now was no exception. The perplet chuckled and answered, "He's saving the day." Delaware, SMAAAASH. Izuku flicked his fingers in Shatter's direction and, as a result, a huge gust of wind was blasted directly in the Decepticon's face, making her cry out as she was forced back into the dry dock, just in time for the water and cargo ship to hit her. The flood carried Shatter all the way to end of the dock, the Decepticon desperately trying to climb up the side of the ship. But then, the ship itself collided with the edge of the dock, and Shatter was caught right in between. The impact caused an instant explosion, blowing Shatter up in a spectacular blaze. Izuku clutched his broken fingers and was about to fall into the drink as well, but then a metal hand reached out and caught him. Bumblebee, with his torso just above the water and holding on to a pipe with one hand, brought Izuku in and held him close to his chest. Izuku let out a relieved breath, resting himself after that entire ordeal. It was finally over. Thanks, B. ZRKT, don't mention it, ZRKT, partner. Bumblebee responded as he pulled them both out of the water. As the two made their way out, Optimus, Windblade, All Might and the girls all rushed over to them, with Kyoka and the symbol of peace leading the way. "Young Midoriya," All Might said in relief as Bumblebee set Izuku down. All Might laughed heartily as he set a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Ahaha. My boy, once again, it seems that you've charged head first into a conflict without a second thought." Izuku rubbed the back of his head. "Why yeah, sorry, All Might. I guess this is kind of a repeat of the sludge villain incident, isn't it?" "Maybe so, but this time, you were able to use your quirk." All Might commended with a hand to Izuku's shoulder. "And you still performed just as a hero should, putting the well-being of others before themselves. And on top of all that, you've even come up with your own smash." Izuku could have sworn he heard All Might choke up a bit before regaining his composure. "Young Midoriya, words cannot describe how proud you have made me today." Hey, thanks All Might, Gah. Izuku screamed as he felt a familiar jabbing sensation in his arm. "And words can describe how worried you made all of us," Kyoka admonished as she pulled her jacks back. "Do you have any idea how worried we were about you?" The moment she saw Izuku's guilty face, however, she relaxed and let out a sigh. But still, you definitely ended up saving the day in the end." She nudged her elbow into Izuku's arm and gave him a wink. "Ya did good, broccoli boy. Just be sure to give us some warning whenever you do that again." Izuku's face flushed red and he laughed nervously. Why yeah, oh of course," he trailed off as he craned his head up to Windblade and Optimus, only to bow to them apologetically. I'm sorry for disobeying your orders, B, but I just couldn't stand by and not help you guys in some way." "We all couldn't," Kyoka clarified. "We've helped you out with so much already, we might as well have seen it through to the end." Windblade sighed and nodded her head. "Well, I can certainly see why you, wait, the end." "What do you mean, the end?" Momo tapped her fingers together apprehensively. Well, yes, I mean, we've defeated the Decepticons and, well, this is usually the part where you guys have to leave. May glanced up to the three bots with a saddened face. "And we'll need to forget we ever saw you, right?" Both Windblade and Bumblebee wore surprised faces before turning to Optimus, who was staring down at the group of humans thoughtfully. Finally, after a few moments, the Prime gave his answer, number. All four teens felt their eyebrows snap up, and All Might seemed quite surprised as well. "What?" the teens exclaimed. "I said that will not be the case." Optimus went on, lowering himself down closer to the teens. "Today, I have witnessed many things that not even I could have expected. A planet full of organic creatures that possess great power, fighting alongside them to protect their world from the Decepticon threat, and them even coming to the aid of my own kind. He bowed his head to the humans in respect. As far as I am concerned, we are in your debt for what you have done. And I know for a fact that we will require further assistance if we are to stay on this planet. After all, we still have to search for the Ark, and we could definitely use some help with that. Bright smiles began to break out on the teens' faces at that, with mirthful laughs escaping them as well. Haha, oh of course. Izuku accepted. We'd be happy to help you search F for your ship. It has to be somewhere on this planet. Kyoka affirmed. All we need to do is get a decent lead. And I will also assist in any way I can. All Might placed a hand over his chest. In fact, I may have some connections that might give us some viable leads. Ahem. Momo cleared her throat, bringing everyone's attention to her. I may not have leads to the Ark, but my family owns some manufacturing warehouses that aren't in use anymore. She set her gaze up to Windblade and Prime for approval. Perhaps we could make a base for you guys out of one of them. Windblade smiled and bowed her head to her. That would be fantastic, actually. Thank you, Momo. Indeed, thank you. Optimus affirmed. That would be most helpful in our endeavors. Kyoka and Izuku then set their sights onto Bumblebee and raised their fists to him, to which he bumped them back gently. In this way, we won't have to leave ya, right B? May asked. Bumblebee gave an affirming buzz, which instantly reminded Optimus of something very important. Ah, yes, how could I be so forgetful? He stood up and placed a hand on Bumblebee's shoulder. Old friend, you've kept this planet safe, even after all this time. Because of you, we now have a future, B-127. The yellow bot stared up to his leader in gratitude, but still felt the need to correct him. ZRKT, my name, ZRKT, is ZRKT, Bumblebee. Optimus' irises rose up, only to remember that, indeed, his friend had finally come up with a name for himself. The Autobot leader gave a low chortle and nodded his head. HM, of course. Bumblebee it is, then. However, at that moment, the sound of helicopter rotors began to fill the air, causing everyone to snap their heads in the city's direction. An aircraft approaches. Everyone, hide. At the Autobot leader's order, everyone ran to cover behind a building, but then they saw what the aircraft was. It was indeed a black helicopter, that had the Sector 7 insignia on the side of it. Well, it seems like we don't have to worry about that, after all. All Might said as he stepped out from behind the building, with everyone else following behind him as the helicopter landed. Come, let's have a little talk, shall we? The helicopter's doors slid open and out came Agents Fowler and Fairborn, with Agent Burns climbing out of the cockpit as well. Fowler wore a relieved grin as the group of teens and Autobots approached them. Thank God you all made it. We got here as fast as we could, but... Fowler. All of a sudden, All Might sprinted up to the agent and gave him a friendly slap on the back, which nearly sent the man toppling over. How the hell are you? I haven't seen you in years, man. Fowler let out a cough, with All Might having nearly knocked the wind out of him. Hack. All Might. Well, this is certainly a surprise. I should say so, All Might said before putting on a more serious face. However, pertaining to you and your people hunting down my protege and his friends. Fowler's shoulders immediately slumped forward, his hand going to his forehead. I'm never gonna live this one down, am I? Nope, Kyoka said with a cheery smile. Probably not. Or at least not anytime soon. All Might raised a brow to Fowler and pat him gently on the back. Just be sure that no mistakes happen like this again, okay, old friend. I mean, they probably won't after all that's happened, but still. Keep a lid on your people. Will do. Fowler nodded before extending a hand and shaking the symbol of peace's own. But still, it really is good to see you, All Might. Marissa and Jacob, however, were starstruck into utter silence over the whole scene, right up until Marissa broke it. Oh my gosh, it's really him. She exclaimed before zipping up to the #1 hero. All Might, I am such a huge fan. Marissa pulled out a pen and small notebook from her back pocket. Would it be too much trouble to ask for your autograph? Why of course, All Might said before taking the pen and notebook to give his signature. Anything for the secret agents who help keep the public safe from the hidden threats. There you are. Eeeeee. Marissa squeaked once more. Thank you so much. Jacob rolled his eyes and led Marissa away from All Might. All right, you got your autograph, Fairborn, now please, go and help Midoriya. He looks like he's got another injury. As he did that, though, the agent also pulled out his own notebook and handed it silently to All Might, mouthing the words, please and thank you, to him. All Might gave a thumbs up in response and gave his signature again. It was then that Marissa actually noticed that Izuku's thumb and middle finger were both purple and hanging limp once again. Oh my gosh, really? She raised a brow to Izuku, who wore a sheepish face. However, Marissa simply smirked and rolled her eyes. She reached out and began healing his hand with her quirk. Why do I get the feeling that I'm going to be healing you a lot, kid? Trust me, I'm trying to get the hang of my quirk. Izuku assured. But in this situation, I didn't have much of a choice. Fowler stepped forward and inspected the general area, taking note of the two dry docks in the shipyard. One of them was filled with several broken parts that resembled Dropkick's body, while the other dock was filled to the brim with water, and its edge was completely blown up and burning with several large, metal body parts scattered about as well. Fowler craned his head up to Optimus, raising a brow to him. So, I take it the cons are gone, Optimus affirmed, lowering his head. Regrettably so. But they left us little choice. If we didn't, they would find some way to get their signal out into space and back to Cybertron. We could not allow that to happen. Believe me, I understand. Fowler nodded. In a world like this, sometimes there are villains that are so powerful that there's little choice but to take that necessary step. Optimus sighed and shook his head. There has already been so much bloodshed in this war. I only hope that one day, it never has to happen again. His optics went over to Windblade, Bumblebee, All Might, the teens and the agents, with Izuku's hand now fully healed after Marissa's treatment. Prime focused onto the greenette and asked, how is your hand, Izuku? Better. Why yeah, much. Izuku waved. A little sore, but it'll pass. Good, because now, we have plenty of work to do. Prime continued. And the first thing we should do is... Wait, May shouted, her hand pointing up to the sky. Look. Up there. Everybody's ears and audio receptors perked up as they heard a new sound, one that reverberated through the entire area. They all did an about-face as they moved their heads up, and the group was left utterly stunned by what they saw come falling out of the starry sky. There, flying down in a perfect V-shape, were 7 asteroids that had into flame as they entered the planet's atmosphere. They only looked like tiny dots right now, but they could tell that they were getting closer with each passing second. The humans could feel their breath being taken away at the sight, with Momo muttering under her breath, oh, my goodness. What in the world is going on? The Cybertronians, however, were all smiling widely, even the ones who wore face coverings. Windblade gave a laugh and cheered victoriously. Ha ha, yes, it's the Autobots. ZRKT, the cavalry's here. Bumblebee pumped a fist into the air. Wait, those are other Autobots. Izuku shouted. May ran her fingers through her hair as she jumped up and down in excitement. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. We're gonna be meeting more Autobots. And so soon, Kyoka exclaimed as well. And here I thought it would be a while before any backup got here. So did I, honestly. Windblade admitted. But I guess the gang were pretty hot on my trail. She set her sights over to Prime and B, giving them a nod. Optimus, Bumblebee, they've been waiting for you. Optimus chuckled at that and both bots nodded back. Hee, I see. Well, we would hate to disappoint them at a time like this. But I think it would do us well to have them meet us somewhere outside of the city. Prime reached up to his Autobot insignia and pressed it, opening it up before pulling a small device out of it. He pressed a button on it and it began blinking and beeping, and he immediately kneeled down and handed it to Fowler. Agent Fowler, take this transmitter into your helicopter and head out of the city to an unseen location. It is a signal that only Autobots can detect, so they will know to follow you out of the city. Fowler gave him a salute. Understood, Prime. He faced Marissa and Jacob, nudging his head back toward the helicopter. You heard the man, bot. Let's move. As the three agents took off in the helicopter, though, Izuku sent Optimus a concerned gaze. And not to bring down the mood down, Optimus, but I don't think it's a good idea to head out the way you are. We don't exactly have T-trucks like the one you T-turned into on our planet. Ha ha ha, Izuku, have you forgotten so quickly? Optimus strolled over to the shipyard's exit and found himself facing the main road, making sure to stay out of any light as much as possible. After a few seconds, he immediately found something he found compatible with his form. A Freightliner cab over truck. His optics scanned the truck and, almost immediately, the panels on his body began to shift and move, his body changing to accommodate the new form he would turn into. And as such, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Optimus transformed into his new vehicle mode, much to everyone's astonishment. There, right before their eyes, was a red Freightliner with a blue trailer hitch and a white stripe going around the middle of the cab. Its smokestacks billowed and its horn honked, leaving the group slack-jawed. Not bad, if I do say so myself. After gawking at his new form for a while, All Might slapped his forehead and laughed heartily. Ahahaha. Oh my word, no matter how many times I see it, I still can't believe it. He stepped up and opened Optimus' driver door. If I may, I'd like to fill in the role of your driver, Optimus. It would seem a bit strange if you didn't have one, you know. A good point, All Might. I would be honored. Optimus turned himself so that he was facing his Autobots and the teens as All Might got in. Well, what are we waiting for? Autobots, transform and roll out. Windblade gave a thumbs up at that. You got it, Prime. After testing wings to make sure they weren't damaged too much, Windblade successfully transformed, though not without a bit of pain in her circuits. MPH, gonna have to get Red to take a look at me. Come on kids, let's go. Alright, Izuku said with a thumbs up as Bumblebee transformed as well, with him and the girls all piling into the Volkswagen in an instant. Let's roll. And with that, the Freightliner semi-truck, Volkswagen Beetle and VTOL jet all moved out of the shipyard, following after the Sector 7 helicopter as the Autobots continued to descend to Musutafu. It was time for a long-awaited reunion. Chapter 20, Arrival to Earth. Ochako Uraraka was happily walking down one of the many streets of Musutafu, carrying a brown paper bag full of groceries as she took in the cool night air. If her apartment weren't across an entire third of the city, she probably would have walked all the way home. After all, with spring coming to a close and the warm, summer air rolling in, they'd be getting fewer cool nights like this. Still, there she was, walking to the train terminal as she kept her groceries close to her chest, all while thinking what she would have for dinner. But then her face fell at the thought of making anything in that dinky kitchen of hers. Never before have I been more afraid to use an oven, she thought to herself. As she made it to the train terminal, though, she was so lost in her thoughts that she almost didn't notice who she was standing directly next to. Uraraka. Thankfully, that person spoke up, and Ochako snapped her head up to see none other than Tenya standing next to her. The spectacled, blue-haired young man smiled and sent her a wave. Good evening. Oh, Iida. Ochako smiled back and went up to him, bowing her head in greeting. Yes, good evening. I can't believe I almost missed you there. No worried, Tenya assured. So, what brings you out here? Ochako lifted her bag up slightly. Oh, just doing a bit of shopping before I head home and get dinner started. Plus, I just wanted to enjoy the night air. Yes, quite the beautiful night indeed. Tenya agreed. I will certainly miss ones like this when the warm weather comes. So, what about you? Ochako asked back. You don't live in Musutafu, if I recall. No, I don't. The studious young man pulled up a plastic bag with something inside weighing it down. But my mother required a special part for her car and they sent me to get it. He glanced off to the side with a rather miffed expression. Even though I was busy studying. Ochako smirked and raised a brow at him. Really? Tenya, we got the day off. It was then that the young Iida began moving his arms in his usual robotic, over-the-top manner. One must always stay on top of their studies if they wish to succeed, Uraraka. Especially in such an esteemed school such as UA. I would be remiss if I let my grades slip due to a single day off. Okay, Okay, I get ya. Ochako waved her hand, attempting to calm him down. Anyways, did you get any looks along the way? Our faces have been all over the news. She blushed and brought a hand to her face. Gotta say, it's pretty crazy having everybody's eyes on me as I was walking through the store. Yes, I too have drawn some eyes. Tenya confirmed. Wait. The young man's ears perked up as a new sound graced them. Did you hear that? Ochako shifted her focus to her hearing as well, and sure enough, she also heard something. It almost sounds like thunder, but instead of petering out, it just kept going, and it sounded like it was getting closer. Yeah. I think it's coming from, she trailed off as she jogged over to the steps of the terminal that led outside, and her eyes widened as her gaze went up. Oh my gosh. Uraraka. Tenya sprinted over to her, just in time for the entire area to brighten up in a fiery orange light. The speedster moved his eyes up, and was amazed as he saw a huge meteor come flying down from out of the sky and zoom straight across their heads. In fact, there were multiple meteors in the sky, moving out to all areas of the city. However, the one that sailed right over them actually landed not too far away, crashing directly into the street with a shakum. The ground shook underneath them as a huge rut was left in the street, trailing fire as a large hole was made where the object landed. There was absolute silence between the two teens, though the same couldn't be said for the city around them as car alarms and the screaming of people could be heard throughout the area, all of them running away from the impact site. Finally, Ochako broke the silence. What the hell was that? I don't know. Tenya uttered, utterly baffled by what he just saw. My first guess would be a meteor from space, but, the quick shuffling of feet alerted him of Ochako's movement, the girl having put her bags down to run down the steps. Wait. Uraraka, what are you doing? I'm gonna go see if anyone needs help. Ochako replied. Tenya extended his hand. Hold on. We should really let the heroes, but the brunette was persistent, dashing down the street toward the impact site. Tenya groaned and facepalmed at the sight. I only pray that I don't go headfirst into something in that manner. He picked up Ochako's groceries and went after her as quick as he could, without using his quirk, of course. Don't want to get into more trouble than we probably already will. RC had to admit, that landing could have gone a bit better. Even as she crawled out of her now wrecked re-entry pod, she could feel her audio receptors ringing, her hand going up to her helm as she collected her bearings. Finally, her optics opened and she saw that she was in a rather sizable hole, and she was greeted with the sound of blaring horns and people screaming. Great, just what I need, she thought to herself. Surrounded by locals and assaulted by loud noises. How am I supposed to conceal myself like this? Hello. As all of the chaos was going on around her, the fembot's optics found something that was rather appealing to her. It was a rather sleek vehicle, one that had curves, sharp headlights, and appeared to be rather fast if she said so herself, especially with the red paint job it was sporting. On the side, near the front of the car, she saw the brand name of it, Lotus Elise. A smile came to RC's lips, nodding to herself in affirmation. Oh yeah, you'll do just fine. RC quickly scanned the Lotus and, in an instant, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. She transformed as quick as she could, leaping from out of the hole as her new vehicle form hit the pavement. Sure enough, she had adopted the form of the Lotus Elise, almost appearing as an exact copy aside from the paint job. Unlike the bright red of the Utter Lotus, her vehicle form was almost entirely hot pink in color, aside from the front of her car mode which was a stark white, aside from the hood itself, which was also pink. She rotated her wheels and hummed to herself. No too shabby. These organics might be small, but they know how to make good vehicles. Over there. Uh-oh. The sound of an approaching voice made RC shift her attention over to an approaching pair of humans, one of which had her eyes on her in concern. Oh scrap. Gotta make a holoform, fast. She moved her sights around and began scanning multiple female humans in the area, most of which were running away. Finally, she got to work creating her holoform, and within seconds, a pink-haired woman wearing a pair of white pants, a black t-shirt under a pink jacket, and a pair of pink shoes was sitting in the driver's seat. RC set her eyes onto the two young organics and began doing what she did best, improvise. Hey. What do you two think you're doing? She thrust her arm over to where she crashed and yelled, "Can't you see it's dangerous over here?" The two stopped in their tracks as RC went on. "You guys really shouldn't be here, you know. We're sorry, ma'am," the blue-haired boy said with a polite bow before putting a hand on the brunette's shoulder. "Uraraka, we need to leave before any heroes show up and accuse us of unlawful demeanor." Uraraka slumped her shoulders and nodded slowly. "Yeah, you're right, Iida." She craned her head back up to RC and asked, "Still, are you okay? It looked like you and a lot of others were caught up in that, whatever it was." RC waved out her window with an assuring smile. "Don't worry, I don't think anyone was hurt by the impact itself. Just a lot of collateral damage." The sound of sirens graced RC's audio receptors as she ushered for Iida and Uraraka to get going. "Now move along, it sounds like law enforcement is on its way. You guys don't wanna get in trouble, right?" "Alright, thanks." And with that, both Uraraka and Iida turned around, going back from whence they came. That was a close one. RC reached for her center console and pulled it open, with a holographic radar map popping up from it in an instant. On it were several more Autobot signals being transmitted, though there was one group of signals that caught her attention quickly. 3 Autobots altogether, and an Autobot beacon that was just ahead of them, and all 4 signals were headed out of the city as quick as possible. "Guess we're playing a game of follow the bird bot, RC shifted gears and performed a perfect 180, headed right for where the other signals were going. "Sounds fine by me." Meanwhile, halfway across the city, 3 more re-entry pods came crashing down, though they didn't exactly make impact in the middle of a city street. No, instead, they managed to careen directly into a large automotive museum, one that had many, many glass windows. As expected, many of the windows shattered as the falling objects crashed into the museum, though shockingly enough, none of the vehicles were hit by them. By debris, yes, but not by the pods themselves. And what's more, their impact had knocked out the power, disabling the security cameras in the process. From out of 2 of these metal pods stepped a pair of figures that instantly went over toward each other, their forms obscured mostly by shadow. The only light that hit them was that belonging to the moon and the small fires surrounding them, and even then, it was only partially. Their blue optics shined in the darkened room, meeting one another within seconds. Gotta work on that landing, I guess. The first one spoke up, his head adorned by a pair of horns. The other one, whose head was wider due to the fins on the sides of his head, rolled his optics. "Oh gee, thanks Sideswipe, I wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't pointed it out." He jabbed a thumb over his shoulder, indicating the damage they had caused. "I would have never guessed after we did all that. Lucky that my paint wasn't chipped." Always with the paint job." Sideswipe groaned. "Sunstreaker, you're hopeless." "Hopelessly handsome, you mean?" Sunstreaker corrected. "I keep telling you that you'd benefit from a wax and buffing yourself." "Nah, not really my thing," Sideswipe waved off. "I know I'll just get it roughed up with all the con-aft kicking I do." Sunstreaker raised a single finger. "Not if you're absolutely careful." Once again, though, his brother shrugged him off. Yeah, At that moment, something caught Sideswipe's attention, and he went over to 2 vehicle displays that were sitting side by side of one another. "But you know what might just be my style? These babies." Sunstreaker went over to see what his brother meant, and his optics widened immediately. "Oh, yeah, those babies might be keepers." As it happened, the brothers had landed directly next to a display of some rather retro cars, ones that appeared to be quite fast and aerodynamic thanks to their wedge shape. There was a sign over the cars that read, Lamborghini Countach, so they figured that's what they were called. The Countaches displayed before them each had their own distinct style to them. One of them appeared to be a normal one, albeit with a large rear spoiler on the back. And the other one seemed to be super tuned, complete with a large, rear-mounted engine that had 2 air intakes on it. Both the Lamborghinis were a sterling silver color, but the Autobot brothers knew for a fact that they would also look good in their colors as well. "Dibs on the spoiler," Sideswipe shouted before scanning his chosen Countach. Sunstreaker rolled his optics once again. "PFF'd, you would go for the one that looks faster, wouldn't you?" He scanned the super tuning Countach in response. "Well, at least I know that my vehicle form will perform better." "You can eat my dust, bro." With that, Sideswipe jumped up and transformed, landing on the ground as his chassis bounced under his weight. Indeed, he was now the Countach with the rear-mounted spoiler, and his paint scheme was a bright cherry red. He revved his engine up and immediately let out a whistle. Ooh, I am gonna love burning rubber with this form. Curb your excitement, bro. Sunstreaker said before transforming into his super-tuned Countach form, the sunny yellow paint shining in the moonlight. First, we're gonna have to find the others and, Sunstreaker immediately cut himself off when he caught sight of himself in the nearest reflective surface, and he couldn't help but gush. Oh, are you seeing me right now? I look amazing. Sideswipe deadpanned at his brother's words. Gee, Sonny, when aren't you amazing? Oh bite me, Sides. Sunstreaker fired back at his brother's sarcastic tone. Yo, boys. The Autobot brothers were caught off guard when a new yet familiar voice graced their audio receptors, swerving around to face where it was coming from. Up on the open second floor, they saw a second obscured figure come waltzing up to the edge before dropping down onto their floor, his visor glowing in the darkness of the place. Sideswipe and Sunstreaker could just barely make out a smirk on the other Autobot's face. You cats gonna stay here all night arguing or are we gonna get some stuff done? Take your pick. Both Autobots brightened up at the sight of their friend, even if no one could see them smiling in vehicle form. Hey, Jazz. Sunstreaker greeted. Glad ya made planet fall safely. And to answer your question, I was going to get going. He performed a turn to face his brother. But this one was about to peel out of here without us. At least I would have left. Sideswipe fired back. You probably would have stayed here all night staring at yourself in that mirror. As the duo went back and forth, the other Autobot, Jazz, couldn't help but purse his lips at the display. Now I knew how Hot Rod felt, rest his spark. He waved his hands and got in between the two immediately. Whoa, okay, let's slow both your rolls for a sec, okay. He craned his head down to Sideswipe in particular. And, I thought you and Strongarm had it bad when it came to arguing. Hey, we're not arguing. Sideswipe assured. We're brothers, so we banter, big difference. A frustrated rev came from his engine. Now me and Strongarm. Yeah, that'd be arguing, but that's because she's literally the fun police. Jazz crossed his arms and gave a chuckle. Hey, yeah, sure. He shook his head and gestured to the two of them. Well, I'm at least glad that you two got your disguises already. Yeah, and something tells me that yours is just waiting in the wind. Sunstreaker agreed. Take a look around, we're literally surrounded by thousands of choices. The Autobot's first lieutenant hummed to himself as he scanned his optics around the place, until he came across something that caught his attention. A race car that was so smooth and sleek, he knew that he had to have it for his disguise. It was on a spinning platform that read, Porsche 935 circa 1977 inches. The car was mainly white, but had the Martini branding all over it, from its windshield to the red, blue and cyan racing stripes that went over its hood, down its rear and along the sides of its doors and back wheel wells. On both doors, there was a large number, 4, on them while the same number was on the front of the car, only in white. All in all, it was perfect. Ooh, hello gorgeous. Jazz scanned the Porsche and transformed into it, making sure to keep all of the decals and racing stripes, with only a few minor alterations. Instead of the Martini Racing tampographs that was on the original's windshield, he changed the words to Agent Meister, doing the same to the Martini logos that were on the doors. Immediately, Jazz took a massive shine to his new form. Ooh yeah, this is definitely a keeper. Sweet. Sideswipe supported. Though, what does Meister mean? It's an Earth word that essentially means master of. Jazz answered. I've been studying up from all the signals we've been getting on our way here. I see. Sunstreaker understood. Well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get out of here before anyone sees us. I hear that. Jazz said before he brought up his holographic radar. I'm picking up lots of Autobot signals heading out of the city, boys. So let's get the lead out and roll out after him. With those words, the three Autobots drove right out of the Automotive Museum and got on the road, following the signals that Jazz picked up without hesitation. Not too far away, at a rather loud and bombastic nightclub, Ejiro Kirishima was sitting with one of his newest friends. Denki Kaminari. The spiky redhead had to admit, places like this weren't usually his scene, something which Denki had agreed with. Plus, the fact that what had happened yesterday at the USJ was still weighing a bit on their mind as well, the two of them both checking over their shoulders at random intervals for any signs of villains. But at the same time, they had to admit, they were having quite a bit of fun. It wasn't their idea to come out here, however. That had been the doing of a third friend of theirs, one who had insisted that the duo came out with her to have a little fun. And as they quickly found out, woohoo, it was very hard to resist the conviction of Mina Ishido. The two boys watched the pink, horned girl as she danced out on the multicolored dance floor, the lights flashing in even more random colors all around her as she moved to the beat of the fast-paced song. Eijiro couldn't help but chuckle at his old schoolmate's energy. Hey, well, at least we know that one of us is definitely having fun. No kidding, dude. Denki agreed. Ishido's killing it out there. He glanced over to his newest friend and tilted his head. I'm still pretty surprised that you guys used to go to the same middle school together. Who would have thought you'd both end up in the same class at UA, huh? Yeah, pretty crazy. Iroh nodded. But hey, can't say that having her in the class isn't interesting, right? Denki lifted his orange soda toward his compatriot. I'll drink to that. The two clinked their cups together and took a swig, with Denki giving Eijiro a knowing smirk. Ya know, I gotta say, all those years in junior high, he pointed over to Ishido, and not once did you ask her out. Eijiro flinched, a bit of a blush on his face before rolling his eyes. Dude, we were practically in different social groups. The thought never even crossed my mind. Besides, he rubbed the back of his head. Let's just say that I was a bit of a different person back then. I see, Denki remarked. That said, there is always a chance. The redhead deadpanned at his blonde friend. Dude, seriously, I don't need a matchmaker. Denki reclined in his seat. Hey, I'm just saying, if you won't ask her out, somebody else likely will. His lips curled up into a grin. And, one of them might just be me, just so you know. You're joking. Eijiro narrowed his eyes. Come on, dude, who wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a nice, fun-loving, hot girl like Ishido? Eijiro brought up a finger to argue back, but then found that Denki had a good point, to which his SMRIK increased. See, point proven. Before either of them could say anything else, though, a certain pink blur came rushing over to them, jumped over the table and then landed between them, much to their shock. Kirishima. Kaminari. Mina reached out, firmly grasped their shoulders, and then pulled them toward her, a devious grin on her face. What are we talking about over here? Some juicy gossip maybe. Taken off guard, Eijiro laughed nervously. Hee, and no, not really. Just talking about what we might be in for at school tomorrow. Yes, he lied, but he wasn't about to talk about his relationship status in front of Mina. Knowing her, she was bound to do conniving things with that information. PFF'd, please. Mina scoffed and rolled her eyes. Why worry about that now when the night's still young? She spread her arms out toward the dance floor. We've got plenty of time before curfew, so let's have some fun. Denki nodded eagerly. Haha. Yeah, let's, wait. The blonde paused as he turned around in his seat, facing the window that their booth was in front of. Do you guys hear some, oh my god? Mina and Eijiro shot up to see what Denki saw, and immediately were greeted by the sight of two asteroids falling down toward an office building, which just happened to be right next door to them. Holy shit, Kirishima shouted before tackling both of his friends under the table. Get down. And with that, Shakun. The impact rocked the foundation of the entire club and made all of the windows shatter, immediately catching everyone's attention and stopping the festivities. Once the rumbling had settled, the music stopped and everyone began to file out of the club as quick as they could, with the three UA students lifting their heads. Is everyone okay? I think so. Denki replied. What was that? Rather than guess, however, Mina was quick to take immediate action, crawling out from under the table before getting to her feet. Let's go find out. She pulled out her camera phone and ran out after everyone else, much to Eijiro's dismay. And no, Ishido, wait. The redhead grunted as he and Denki quickly got out and rushed out the door, following Mina as she broke out into a sprint the moment she was outside. The two boys couldn't help but be stunned at what they saw next. The parking lot had been absolutely destroyed, and the office building now had 2 new holes in it. There was fire, downed light poles, huge craters in the pavement, and already, Eijiro and Denki could see law enforcement approaching. And Mina was running straight out into the middle of it, holding her camera phone out to take footage of it all. Eijiro quickly shook off his shock and booked it after her, Denki hot on his tail. Ishido. Wait up. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Mina shouted so her camera phone could pick up her voice. Just as she said that, a downed lamp post's light blew up in a flurry of sparks next to her. Haha. There are explosions everywhere. This is easily cooler than what you see in the movies, I swear to God. Mina finally came to a halt in front of the now ruined office building, with Denki and Eijiro catching up to her as she kept filming. Oh man, I hope whoever owns this place has asteroid insurance. Huh, yeah, no kidding. Denki agreed, only to glance over his shoulder the moment he heard sirens. Approaching them was a fire truck and 2 law enforcement vehicles, a black and white Jeep Gladiator police truck with red sirens, and a modified red and white Nissan patrol rescue vehicle. And on the fire truck stood the hero known as Backdraft. Guys, not to be a party pooper, but I think we should get out of here. What? No way. Mina shook her head. Not until I get a piece of that meteor as a souvenir. Crash. Mina and the boys snapped their heads around at the sound of a loud metallic crash, one that was coming from the other side of a chain-link fence off to the side. They noticed that a piece of steel shelving had just been knocked over, and that a large, shadowy figure was quickly trying to get out of view. Whoa. Did you guys see that? I think I did. Eijiro nodded before noticing that Backdraft and the other firefighters were moving over to them. Hey, over here. Backdraft immediately noticed and began questioning them, using his water pump quirk to create a barrier between the teens and the fence. What are you kids doing here? He questioned. This area's dangerous. You 3 should be nowhere near here. Eijiro bowed apologetically. Sorry, sir, we know. My friend got a bit overexcited. He pointed over toward the chain-link fence. But I think we just saw something move back there. Behind the tree. Backdraft craned his head toward the fence, and indeed, he did see something, but it wasn't anything that he expected to see. What in the world? Through the chain-link fence, he saw 2 more law enforcement vehicles, ones that appeared to be near identical to the ones that they had with them. One was another Jeep Gladiator police truck, but in different colors. It was still mostly white, but had blue detailing down the sides of its doors, its wheel wells and its truck bed, along with a thick blue stripe going over its hood and roof. On top of its roof was a police siren, though this one had both red and blue lights. The other vehicle was yet another modified Nissan patrol rescue vehicle, only in a primarily white color scheme rather than red. Its front end, wheel wells, and rear hatch were all gray while a red stripe ran down its doors. There was a red heartbeat monitor symbol tampographed on each side of the vehicle, and it had a rather large light bar that extended all the way toward the back of the vehicle. Overall, it was an odd sight to see as the 2 rescue vehicles pulled out of the area behind the chain-link fence, their sirens blaring and lighting up as they rolled off toward the road. After a long silence, a hopeful Mina spoke up. So, could I get a space rock for the road? As the Jeep Gladiator and Nissan Patrol drove down the road with their sirens on full blast, the pickup truck spoke with a feminine voice. Pardon me for stating the obvious, red alert, sir, but that was far too close for comfort. She spoke with great concern as she continued. We were nearly spotted by the organic creatures, and as I'm sure you know, Cybertronian interplanetary protocol clearly states that all Cybertronians are to remain in disguise at all times. Red Alert finished in a rather stern voice. It is to keep the local inhabitants of alien worlds from being alarmed at our presence. I am aware of protocol, Strongarm. But with where our landing placed us, we weren't exactly in the best spot to begin with. At this point, we should probably be thankful that we managed to get away from the scene. He slowed down a bit to pull alongside her. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I am not the one who knocked over that metal shelving. The police cadet chuckled nervously at the medic's accusatory tone, quickly searching for something to get her out of it. Well, I suppose not, oh. There's Jazz, Sunstreaker and, grr, she grumbled as a certain red Lamborghini Countach pulled up alongside her, with a different yellow Countach and a Porsche doing the same. Sideswipe. Strongarm's voice dripped with annoyance. Hey, Strongarm. Sideswipe said with a happy tone. You sound like you've just had a great time. Rough landing. Strongarm growled and was about to fire back when Red Alert moved to separate them. That's enough, you two. Remember, we've got a rendezvous to get to. Once he was sure the two younger bots wouldn't start something, he moved up next to Jazz. Speaking of, you've got the coordinates, right, Jazz? Sure do, Red. Jazz confirmed. And, we seem to be on the right track. And, if I'm not mistaken, not only is Windblade with that group we're following, but so's B-127, and, Op himself. Optimus, it's about time. Red Alert chortled to himself. What about RC? Where's she? I'm detecting her about a couple clicks from our location. Jazz explained. And if I'm not mistaken, Bulks landed not too far away from her. Sunstreaker couldn't help but chuckle at that. Hee hoo boy, hopefully Bulkhead didn't land himself in too bad of a spot. Meanwhile, across the city, a little girl was walking outside toward her pool, a loud sound having woken her up from her sleep. In one hand, she was holding a small plush toy which, oddly enough, was that of a Dimetrodon. Not a toy that a little girl would typically have, but considering that she had sharp teeth and leathery brown skin, she wasn't exactly a normal little girl. All the same, however, she wasn't exactly sure what made the loud sound that awoke her, but she was going to get to the bottom of it. And whatever it was at the bottom of her pool. Because as she got within 5 feet of it, an enormous hand reached up and crushed the step ladder before pulling the rest of itself out. It appeared to be a huge, rotund green robot with a construction helmet-shaped helm and a large, silver chin, its blue optics shining in the darkness of the night. The large robot stepped over the little girl, apparently not having noticed her at all, and just walked away, moving around the house as carefully as it could. The little girl could only respond with, is this a bad time to mention you broke our pool? Kiki. The little girl, Kiki, swiveled her head around to see her big sister, Kata, come running out of the house. The gray-skinned girl sighed in relief as their parents sprinted out after her. There you are. Thank God. Sweetheart. Kiki's mother called out. What are you doing out here all by yourself? We were worried sick about. At that moment, though, the father of the family took notice of the pool, along with the fact that it had been ruined. Oh my God, what happened to the pool? As that was happening, the large robot made sure to duck his head low behind the house as best he could, hoping that he hadn't been spotted. But, as he heard the father's proclamation, he couldn't help but go, oops, my bad, in his deep, baritone voice. He quickly began searching around for a disguise to scan for himself, and thankfully, there was one right in the driveway. It was a rather large, and fittingly enough, bulky pickup truck, one that was entirely red and quite intimidating. The robot scanned his optics over it and saw that it had the word, Hummer, across its grille, and on the side it had a decal that said, H2 Sut, near the front. It also had a grille guard and a set of 4 extra floodlights on top, and within nanoseconds, he knew he had found the disguise for him. Oh yeah, this is definitely it. He scanned the Hummer and transformed, taking on its form but with his signature green color instead of the red. Once he was in his new vehicle form, he rocked from side to side and mused, roomy. And with that, he drove off down the driveway, hoping that family wouldn't dwell on the fact that he had ruined their pool for too long. As he drove along the road, however, a certain pink and white Lotus Elise had quickly caught up with him, greeting him with a friendly voice, Hey, Bulkhead. RC. Bulkhead answered, That you? Hey, who else would it be? RC retorted. So, how was your landing? Bulkhead let out a groan. Gah, could have been better, I think a young organic may have saw me. Hold on, what? Hey, I landed in her family's swimming pool, okay. Bulkhead said with a frustrated tone. Not like I had a choice in the matter. I had to get out of there, so I just took the direct route. I was able to get out of there before her guardians arrived, though. RC sighed and muttered, well, hopefully they won't believe her when she tells them. Right now, we really should get going. If Bulkhead could nod right now, he would. Right, the big bot's waiting for us. Oh ho, man, it's gonna be so good to see him. Yeah, RC trailed off as a happy thought came to her processor. But he's not the only one who I'll be happy to see. There was a fairly dense fog outside the city of Musutafu as Bumblebee, Optimus Prime, Windblade and the humans all closed in on a rather secluded meeting point, the Sector 7 helicopter making a landing in the middle of a large lot of brick buildings. The place appeared to be used for storage, and thankfully, the place wasn't hard to get into. The locked, chain-link fence was easily opened by Optimus driving into it, the doors swinging open and allowing him and Bumblebee to roll in. The two vehicles came to a stop and Windblade swooped down from overhead, touching down on the ground next to them. "Are we in the clear?" Over by the helicopter, Fowler, Burns and Fairborn all disembarked the aircraft, the former speaking up. "We should be. This place hasn't been used for years," Fowler explained. "City Hall keeps wanting to tear this place down, but between all the crime and collateral damage caused by villains, they just haven't gotten to it yet. Which is quite fortunate for us." All Might climbed out of Optimus' cab and landed on the ground, sending a wave over to his charges inside Bumblebee. "Kids, come on out. The coast is clear." With that, Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo all climbed out of Bumblebee, the teens all moving to stand in the middle of the three Autobots as they transformed. As they did, though, the humans all took notice of the physical changes that Optimus had went through when he scanned his new alt mode. His chest now more resembled that of the Freightliner, and the wheels on his calves were now fully exposed. The Gatling gun pieces were no longer hanging off his arms and his smokestacks were now longer, plus there was no extra panel on his back. Izuku was quick to take note of that. Wow, oh Optimus, you look a bit different." Prime gave the young brunette a nod. "Indeed, Izuku. When Cybertronians scan new alternate forms, we all go through these changes. At times, it's even necessary so that we can fit in the alt mode we choose." Windblade explained further. "Though there are cases where a Cybertronian can shift their mass in order to fit in their alt mode as well." "Fascinating," Mei exclaimed as she took out a notepad and began jotting down notes. "Ooh, I just keep learning more and more about you guys and it's fantastic." Kyoka chuckled and put a hand on the notepad. "Hee, how about we save the note-taking for later, huh, Mei? After all, we've got a lot of bots to meet." "Yes, and that's exciting enough as it is," Momo said with an eager smile up to Windblade. "I cannot wait to meet all your friends. And I can't wait to see them again." Windblade concurred, her gaze shifting toward Optimus and Bumblebee. "And I'm sure they'll be pumped to see you two again, without a doubt." Optimus let out a chuckle and Bumblebee buzzed happily, both of them reaffirming Windblade's words. "I'm quite sure, Windblade. It had been a very long time, for certain." The Autobot leader trailed off when he heard the sound of approaching engines in the distance, leading him to crane his head up toward where they had entered the compound. Sure enough, he saw two pairs of headlights approaching from out of the fog. HM, and here they come. The teens, Sector 7 agents, and All Might all did an about-face, seeing that there was indeed two vehicles approaching from the fog. Once they entered the lot, they could see that they were a pink and white Lotus Elise and a big, green Hummer H2 Sut, both of them slowing down as they approached. "Ha, there they are," Burns muttered to himself. "Ooh, this is gonna be big," Marissa said giddily. "I can barely wait." Crash. "Whoa, what the heck?" Everyone snapped their heads around to see that yet another entrance on the other side of the compound had been broken through, this time with 5 pairs of headlights all approaching them at top speed. Leading the pack was a Porsche 935 77th race car, along with a pair of Lamborghini Countachs. They could also see and hear bright sirens from the two larger vehicles in the back, and when they came into view, the group saw that they were a Jeep Gladiator police truck and a Nissan Patrol Rescue SUV. "Well then, I definitely wasn't expecting that," All Might stated. The group remained silent as all of the vehicles pulled to a stop, the Hummer and Lotus halting directly in front of them while the other 5 cars surrounded them. And then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. All at once, they began to transform. The front of the Lotus Elise split into 3 parts, with the headlights and front wheels separating from the center part as it folded down and collapsed for the robot's breastplate. The remaining sides then flipped their wheels downward before a pair of arms folded out from underneath the car, moving the 2 sides of the car up so that they were sticking straight up from the robot's shoulders. The rear of the vehicle then began to separate and fold into itself before becoming a pair of slender legs, the back wheel wells shifting onto the sides of the knees while the tires themselves moved into the robot's shins. The doors folded into the roof of the vehicle mode, which was on the robot's back. Then, her head flipped out from her chest, revealing the familiar rounded helm that Bumblebee had drawn just a few days before. RC. Izuku whispered, taking a glance over to Bumblebee to see that his optics had widened substantially. Next to RC, the Hummer's large front tires extended down on two large armatures, which quickly transformed and revealed themselves to be the legs. The front of the Hummer folded down to form a belly while the headlights and hood panels folded up over the windshield, only for the front doors to fold over them as well to form the robot's chest. Then, the truck bed split in half and moved out, the robot's arms transforming from underneath them as the bed folded up to create the robot's broad shoulders. The rear tires stuck out from the robot's shoulder blades as his head popped out from the roof, revealing his large chin and crested helm. He was nearly as tall as Optimus, but still appeared bigger due to how rotund he was. Next came the Porsche, and its transformation began with the roof and doors of the vehicle just moving up and folding in on itself, allowing the rear of the car to extend into a pair of legs. The robot's feet flipped out from the rear bumper and from the front, the wheels rotated into the body, with the arms flipping out in their place. Then, the entire hood of the Porsche folded down and formed the upper body of the robot, his head popping out from the hood. He had a black helm with two small horns sticking out from the sides of his head, and instead of two optics, he had a single visor. Surprisingly enough, he did his whole transformation while doing a sort of break-dancing maneuver, which took everybody off guard. Whoa ho, now that was pretty cool. Kyoko laughed. Meanwhile, the two Lamborghinis transformed as well, though they did so in two completely different ways. The rear of the yellow one separated into two halves before the sides and rear wheels shifted outwards, transforming into a pair of arms as the air intake swiveled around to face the back. And then, astonishingly, the entire rear of the car performed a 180-degree spin, with the bottom now facing upward. Then, from the front of the car, the roof shifted up, forming the chest plate before the whole front flipped around again and extended downward, forming the legs. The hood and front bumper flipped up to form the feet and the robot's head revealed itself, his helm having fin-like structures on each side and his chin painted black to resemble a goatee. The red Lamborghini, however, had its entire hood flipped downward to form the robot's chest, with its arms folding out from its undercarriage while the doors flipped into its body. The rear of his vehicle mode flipped out to form its legs and his feet folded out from underneath, allowing him to stand up as a shoulder-mounted missile launcher and his head came out. This robot's head was a lot more angular than his brother's, complete with a pair of horns. The Jeep Gladiator's entire bed flipped out to form the legs of its robot mode, its feet unfolding as well as the hood split in half and folded down over its grille to form the robot's breastplate. The doors of the Jeep propped themselves up on the robot's back, forming a pair of wings as its arms were formed out of the roof, the siren on top splitting in half and settling on its forearms. The front tires formed the robot's broad shoulders while the rear tires folded into the calves. By the end, the Jeep had revealed a rather feminine figure hiding beneath it and the head revealed itself, revealing that the robot was indeed a female. Her white helm was angular and had blue detailing with a yellow chevron situated in the middle of her forehead. Finally, the Nissan Patrol transformed, beginning with its doors opening and revealing its large, blue arms. One had a normal hand while the other had a red, prod-shaped tool sticking out of its wrist. The robot's blue legs then folded out from underneath the vehicle, taking the rear wheels and wheel wells with them as its feet folded down. The entire end of the vehicle then lowered down to form the robot's chest, the doors now mounted on its shoulders as the entire top of the Nissan became a large backpack. From out of the hood of the vehicle, the robot's head popped up, one that was almost entirely blue aside from his silver mouth area and his red, V-shaped visor. He was nearly as tall as the green bot, but he appeared somewhat smaller due to their differing builds. When all was said and done, there were now 10 large robots looming over the 7 humans, and all of them couldn't help but stare at all of them in awe. Wow! May beamed from ear to ear. This is incredible. It was then that the Porsche Autobot let out a laugh, his sights settled right onto Optimus. Ha ha ha. Yo, Op. He performed a rather stylish mid-air flip directly over the humans' heads before landing in front of Optimus with the greatest of ease, grabbing the bot's hand in an enthusiastic shake while lightly smacking the commander's arm. "Man, you are one awesome sight for sore optics, big bot. It's been ages." Optimus laughed as he shook the bot's hand. "Haha, it's good to see you as well, Jazz." He craned his head up as the medic bot approached him, giving them both a nod. "In fact, it's good to see all of you. Tell me, what took you so long, Red Alert?" In what was considered a rare sight, a small grin came to Red Alert's face, though he still let out a scoff. "HMPH, very funny. I only wish we could have been here sooner, Optimus." He then shook the Autobot leader's hand as well. "Still, it's great to see you." "Likewise, B-127. Their conversation was interrupted when suddenly, RC practically bolted forward and pulled Bumblebee into a massive hug, practically lifting the slightly shorter bot up off the ground. "Haha, you're alive." She craned her head over and saw Windblade standing right next to her, and she immediately brought her into the hug as well. Windblade, you actually found them." Hee, why yeah, I guess I did." Windblade chuckled nervously before noticing that the two Lamborghini Autobots and the Jeep Fembot were rushing over to join in on the embrace. Sideswipe, Sunstreaker, Strongarm, hold on just a cycle, gah. But it was too late. Within moments, the 6 young bots were in a group hug, with Strongarm speaking to Bumblebee. "Do you know how worried we were when you didn't check in, B?" she asked. "You're 300 stellar cycles late." "Yeah, B, what happened?" Sideswipe asked. However, when the only response he got was a low buzz, he and everyone else knew that something was terribly wrong. "W, what happened to your voice?" Hearing this, Red Alert moved over and broke up the hug, bluntly saying, "Move, let me see." He aimed his prod-shaped tool over Bumblebee's neck and a small laser scanner shot out of it, causing Bumblebee to cough momentarily before Red Alert stopped. He brought up a holographic screen on his arm, reading the results of his scan. Oh no. He directed his sights over to Bumblebee in concern. "B-127, how did this happen?" "How did what happen, Red?" Sunstreaker asked. "B-127's vocal processor." Red Alert answered as he stood back up. "It's been ripped out." A collective gasp from almost all the bots rang out through the area. "Say what?" the bulky green Autobot exclaimed. "How? When did that happen?" Windblade, with a saddened face, stepped forward to answer. "Well, Bulkhead, it happened pretty much when B first landed on Earth. He was followed here by a Seeker, and while he did manage to defeat him, his vocal processor was ripped out in the process, and his memory was left fractured." Her gaze moved over to an equally saddened Bumblebee, his optics focused on the ground. "And while I did manage to fix his memory with a cortical psychic patch, he still can't speak, at least not normally." Every Autobot there was visibly disheartened at the news. B-127 was known for speaking with great enthusiasm, so to hear that his voice had been taken away from him, it was almost as if a part of him was missing. "Oh my goodness," RC muttered before moving over to give Bumblebee a hug, which almost instantly perked him back up a little bit. "B, I'm so sorry. This must be really hard for you." Slowly but surely, Bumblebee returned the hug, his inner circuits practically doing flips at the feeling of RC's embrace. But then, she pulled her head back so she could look him in the optics with a confused face. "But, wait, what did Windblade mean by you can't speak, normally?" Bumblebee's optics lit up and he answered by switching on his radio. "ZRKT, well, ZRKT, let's just say, ZRKT, I speak, ZRKT, in different ways, ZRKT, now." The group of Autobots stared at Bumblebee in astonishment for a while before Sideswipe gave an excited laugh. "Haha, B, what the heck did you just do? Was that some sort of radio speak?" Strongarm asked. "ZRKT, bingo, we have a winner." B responded. RC brightened up as well and let out a gasp. Oh my gosh, that is so creative. And I think it's pretty cute, too." At that, Bumblebee's face became sheepish and he rubbed the back of his head, only for RC to ask, "So, B, how did you learn to do that?" Bumblebee pointed toward the humans, specifically at Izuku and Kyoka. "ZRKT, they helped me, ZRKT, with that. The newly arrived Autobots all moved their heads down to the humans, and almost immediately, they froze. They had been so caught up in their reunion with Optimus, Windblade and B, that they had somehow entirely missed the fact that there were humans among them. Well, scrap, covers blown, everyone. Sideswipe threw his hands up. Our mission's a total bust. However, one Autobot didn't seem all that perturbed. Oh please, Sideswipe. Red Alert shook his head. These humans were obviously with Optimus and the others. The medic went over to Sector 7's helicopter and pulled out a small chip from the craft, recognizing it as the beacon they were following. Why else would this beacon be on the move? It's obvious that Prime trusts these humans. He gave a nod to his leader. Am I correct, Optimus? You most certainly are, Red Alert. Prime confirmed. And on that note, allow me to begin introductions. The red and blue bot gestured his hand down toward the humans. Autobots, this is Izuku Midoriya, Kyoka Jiro, Mei Hatsume, Momo Yaoyorozu, Agents Fowler, Burns and Fairborn, and All Might of planet Earth. They have been of great help to all of us in keeping this planet safe from the Decepticons. Windblade pointed toward Izuku and All Might in particular. In fact, you have these two to thank for finding and getting B back online. She then pointed toward Mei and Kyoka as well. And Mei's been helping keep B hidden while Kyoka's the one who helped him realize he could communicate through his radio. She then gestured to Momo. And while Momo hasn't been with us for very long, without her help, we would have had a much harder time in dealing with the cons. We owe them a lot. Momo blushed and waved Windblade off. Oh, please, Windblade, we didn't do much. Our makeshift cannon only blew off Shatter's arm, so. You humans made a makeshift cannon. Sideswipe said with a beaming grin. One that actually took a con's arm off. Dude, do you guys have any idea how impressive that is for an organic being to do? He gave a big thumbs up. Hey, as far as I'm concerned, you guys are alright in my data banks. There was a bit of a pause until Agent Burns coughed into his hand. And us. I mean, we were the ones who helped you find Optimus Prime, too. Kyoka crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes at the agent. Yeah, but you were also tricked by the Decepticons into helping them hunt Bumblebee and Windblade down. She pursed her lips in annoyance. Don't think that we haven't forgotten just because you helped out once. The newly arrived Autobots all shared a shocked look before Bulkhead faced the agents. Is that true? Yes, it is. Fowler's hand went to his neck as he explained what happened. We had encountered the Decepticons first, and they tricked us into thinking that Bumblebee was a fugitive who wanted to bring your war to our planet, and… Say no more, man. Jazz raised a hand, seemingly not mad about it at all. Perfectly understandable. The cons have been deceiving others for millennia at this point. And, besides, you guys helped out in the end, so we cool, dog. Fairborn wiped her brow in relief. Phew, that's reassuring. I was worried that you guys would hold a grudge. She glanced over to Kyoka, who seemed a bit miffed that the Autobots weren't as miffed as she was. Lord knows we already have one person who does. But hey, I'm just glad that Bumblebee and the others were. Wait, back it up a bit. Strongarm interrupted, pointing to Fowler with a confused face. You keep mentioning someone named Bumblebee. Who is that? Doesn't sound like any bot I've heard of. Sunstreaker affirmed. All at once, though, Windblade, Prime and the teens all pointed right over to the former B-127, the city speaker explaining with a coy smile. Well, guess who finally found their name? At that moment, the Autobots' jaws all went slack, stunned expressions taking over their features. All except RC, whose smile was as wide and as bright as could be. Ah. She zipped right over and pulled Bumblebee into another hug, this one tighter than all the rest. As big of a fan as Bumblebee was of being hugged, he had to admit, he could feel his optics being squeezed out of his head. B12, I mean, Bumblebee. You've actually gotten your name. Sideswipe went over and pat him on the shoulder. Hey, congrats, Bumblebee. But, what the heck is it supposed to mean? Mei raised her hand at that. Oh, it's actually a small black and yellow insect that lives here on Earth. We thought it would be fitting since Bumblebee sounded like he was buzzing all the time without his versus voice. Izuku elaborated further. The fact that he's yellow didn't hurt. I suppose it is fitting. Red Alert figured. Bulkhead pumped a fist. Well, I like it. He extended said fist over to the yellow mech. Congrats on finding your name, B. Bumblebee returned the fist bump as Jazz gave him a thumbs up. Yeah, big props to ya, homie. The visored bot then moved his sights back over to the humans before lowering himself down onto one knee, giving them all a smile. Well, now that we know who you are, I'm guessing we should probably introduce ourselves. He gave a two-fingered salute to the group. Name's Jazz, and I'm the Autobots' first lieutenant. It's nice to meet such cool cats like yourselves. The humans all glanced toward one another before Kyoka spoke back. Yeah, nice to meet you, too. But, where'd you learn to talk like that? Cool cat, homie, and dog aren't exactly things I can see an alien saying. Oh, yeah. Jazz chuckled a bit. Hey, you'd be right about that. See, I've been doing a bit o' researchin' on my way here. We picked up some o' the signals your satellites were puttin' out and I've learned a bit o' human slang. Ya dig? Hey, I dig a lot, actually. Kyoka said before noticing a pair of feet coming over toward her. She looked over just in time to see Strongarm having stepped right up to her, the white and blue fembot kneeling down as she wore a curious expression. Kyoka quirked a brow right back at Strongarm and decided to make the first move. Hi. Surprisingly, rather than replying, Strongarm slowly extended her finger down and gently poked Kyoka on the forehead. Interesting, the femme noted. You humans seem to have a thick layer of tissue and muscle over your skeletal frame, which if I'm not mistaken, is made from collagen and calcium phosphate rather than different metals. She held out her palm and brought up a holographic data pad, scrolling through it before finding what she was searching for. I had better note this within the protocol, organic creatures are super fragile. Kyoka was now even more confused than she had been. You poke me in the head, take down some notes, and don't even bother to introduce yourself. Oh, sorry. Strongarm bowed her head, making her data pad disappear. My name's Strongarm. I'm a cadet of the Autobot police force, or at least I was until the war broke out. Nowadays, I do field research on foreign planets, so I'm sorry that I got my priorities mixed up. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kyoka. So interesting, May exclaimed as she jotted down on her notepad. Cybertronians can learn languages by osmosis, do field research on other planets, and have their own police protocol. So cool. She craned her head up toward Red Alert and pointed her pen at him. And you, Red Alert, right. I take it that you must be the medic of the team. With a stoic face, Red Alert answered. Yes, I am. What of it? Tell me, does your race have vital innards that are similar to humans? May asked with an inquisitive gaze. Like a stomach, respiratory system, etc. If Red Alert had iriges, he would be furrowing them at the pink-haired girl at that moment. Well, similar, yes, but not exactly one-to-one. He pointed his muddly tool at May. While organic beings such as yourself have digestive tracts and circulatory systems, we have processing systems that take the energon we consume and pump it all throughout our bodies, and the process is in a constant cycle. And while we do not require air to breathe, we do have air intakes for cooling our systems. May giggled like a madwoman as she continued taking down notes. Hee, I'm learning so much. Red Alert craned his head toward Windblade and tilted it to her. Is she always like this? Windblade simply waved her hand to the medic. Oh, yeah, she's super interested in our species. So please, Red, indulge her a little bit. I fear the hole I'll fall into if I do. Bulkhead cleared his throat, hoping to move on. Well, in any case, hi. He waved toward the humans in front of him. Name's Bulkhead. I'm the Autobots demolition expert. And, hey, not to brag, but, in the blink of an eye, Bulkhead transformed his hands into two weapons, a large energy cannon and a big mace. I'm pretty good at my job. Haha, I can see that. All Might laughed as he saluted Bulkhead. A pleasure to meet you, Bulkhead. I am All Might, and not to brag myself, but I too am capable of wrecking quite a few things. Namely bad guys, that is. Hey, I can see. Bulkhead said as he lowered himself down closer to All Might. You seem pretty powerful, more than any organic being that I've ever seen in the past, even. Well, that's because I am this world's greatest hero. All Might stated as he flexed his muscles. It's my job to stay in tip-top shape in order to bring all of the dastardly villains of the world to justice. In his mind, All Might thought to himself, even though this form can only be used for 3 hours at a time. Heroes. Villains. Bulkhead echoed with a raised eyelid. Anyone mind explaining? Izuku was all too quick to oblige. Oh, well, you see, why you guys have actually landed on a WW world where 80% of the population have superpowers called quirks. He noticed that all of the Autobots were concentrated on him as he explained, and for once, he was glad for the attention. Namely because it was coming from awesome giant robots. And, well, when quirks started showing up, people began using them for both heroic and evil deeds. Fascinating. Red Alert said as he put a hand to his chin. It's quite surprising that this world's organic inhabitants have such abilities. Well, I'm not too shocked. RC said with a shrug. After all, if Cybertronians can have special powers, why can't organic beings? She sent a wave down to the group. But, in any case, my name's RC. I'm one of the best Autobot intel officers around. Kyoka gave the pink Autobot a smirk right back. Oh, we know all about you, RC. Her gaze shifted to Bumblebee, giving him a wink as he moved his optics away. See, while B's memory was busted, he did sometimes get a few flashes of his old life. Kyoka went back to RC and crossed her arms. And hey, you were actually one of those major memories. RC gave a gasp and her optics darted over to Bumblebee, who had turned away in hopes of not being noticed. He failed spectacularly as RC went over and, once again, gave him a hug. Aw, B. That's so sweet. ZRKT, aw, shucks, ZRKT, don't mention it. Bumblebee said before eyeing Kyoka, his optics narrowed at the earphone jack user as she snickered behind her hand. Next to her, Momo faced toward the Autobot brothers, giving them both a smile. And who would you two be? Sideswipe smirked as he jerked his thumb between himself and his brother. Who, us? Why we're only the most awesome pair of Autobot warriors you've ever seen. Name's Sideswipe. He reached over and put an arm across his brother's shoulders. And this guy's my brother, Sunstreaker. Wait, you two are brothers? Momo asked. How does that work? Well, we both emerged from Cybertron at the same time. Sunstreaker explained. And from the same pool of living metal, no less. He raised an eyelid over to his brother with an annoyed face. And ever since that day, I've been dealing with getting his skid plate out of trouble. Ha! Don't make me laugh. Sideswipe balked. Name one time that I got in trouble. Surprisingly enough, it was Strongarm who had an answer for that. Oh gee, let me count the ways. She brought up yet another holopad and began reading off Sideswipe's misdemeanors. Destruction of property, speeding in a no-speed zone, back alley fighting, unauthorized racing. Did I mention that all of these happened multiple times? Sideswipe placed his hands on his hips. Oh yeah, how could I forget? After all, you were there for every single one of those. Kind of hard not to be when you were my roommate for so long. Strongarm countered, getting right up in Sideswipe's face. And even if I hadn't, I probably still would have taken you in. Only you would have had a much harder time being bailed out. Is the concept of fun just foreign to you? So long as it's safe, I'm willing to have some fun. But where's the fun in safe fun? As the two Autobots argued, All Might leaned over toward Bulkhead and asked, does this happen often? Bulkhead deadpanned at that. You have no idea. Before the argument could get any more heated, Windblade rushed up between them and pushed them away from each other. All right, enough. She grit her metal teeth together and sent a stern glare to both of them. How you two are still finding things to argue about to this day is simply beyond me. Rather than respond to her, Strongarm and Sideswipe simply huffed and turned away from one another, crossing their arms for good measure. Windblade sighed and shook her head. I hope being on this planet teaches you two to actually get along. PSH, doubt it. Sideswipe scoffed. Same. Strongarm nodded. And that's pretty much the only thing we can agree upon. Ahem. Everyone went silent when Optimus Prime cleared his throat, garnering the group's attention. Well, while this has certainly been an interesting introduction, I believe now is the time to shift our focus onto important matters. He craned his head down toward the 3 Sector 7 agents near his feet. Namely the subject of the ground bridge that you are keeping within your base. All at once, the Autobots were all focused on Fowler, Burns and Fairborn as well, with Red Alert staring at them intently. You have a ground bridge in your base. How? Where did you acquire such a thing? Agent Fowler coughed into his hand, trying his best to avoid the medic's red-visored glare. Ahem, well, that's actually a pretty long story in and of itself. But we can go into explanations later once we actually get back to the base. He furrowed his brows up to Optimus in curiosity. What I want to know is why you bring it up, Prime. Optimus nodded down to Fowler as he elaborated further. To put it simply, Agent Fowler, I feel that the ground bridge would be more suited to be in our possession rather than held deep down in Sector 7's underground bunker. He gave a nod toward Momo. After all, Miss Yaoyorozu has offered to help us find a base through her family's abandoned warehouses. It would definitely make things easier if the ground bridge were above ground rather than beneath it, especially in terms of fueling it with energon. Agreed. Red Alert voiced his opinion, though quickly became unsure about that last part. But, Prime, how can we be sure that there even is energon on this planet? Even if we did move the ground bridge to a more convenient location, there's no guarantee that we'd be able to fuel it. There was a momentary pause before Optimus answered him. The Ark's mission was to locate a massive supply of energon. Its scanners were made specifically to locate such deposits. He turned to his Autobots with a determined gaze. If it really has crash-landed on this planet, then there cannot be any doubt that there must be a sizable quantity of energon on Earth. He clenched a fist as he finished his speech. And while locating it may be a difficult task, it is one that we must undertake if we hope to survive on this planet, as well as win the war back on Cybertron when the time comes to return. He craned his head down toward Fowler. And we could certainly use whatever help we can in that area. So, Agent Fowler, can we count on your organization's help in that matter? Fowler gave a short chortle and shook his head. Hey, not once in my life did I ever think I'd be doing something like this. He extended a hand toward Optimus and nodded. You got yourself a deal, Prime. But in return, I hope that you and your Autobots will be able to protect our planet if those Decepticon punks come knocking on our door again. Of course, Optimus accepted the handshake without a second thought. Should the Decepticons return, we will be sure to do everything in our power to stop them from harming your world. And you can count me in on that, too. All Might said as he put his own hand in. After all, I am the world's symbol of peace. If I were to just let those Decepticons try and destroy this planet, I would be doing a pretty bad job of protecting it. He gave a thumbs up toward Optimus. You can count on my help in your mission, Optimus, I can promise you that. That is much appreciated, All Might. Optimus returned before eyeing the four human teens. And of course, I would be remiss to exclude you kids as well. Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo all brightened up at his words. If you four can help my Autobots acclimate to Earth and keep up their disguise, then you would all be of great help. The four teens all saluted the Prime immediately. Oh, of course, Izuku assured. We won't let you down, Optimus. Count on it. Kyoka jerked her thumb over her shoulder toward the newly arrived Autobots. We'll get these guys into shape, don't you worry. I can't wait to learn everything there is to know about Cybertron. Mei squeaked as her head snapped around to Red Alert. I have so many questions for you guys, you don't even know. While Red Alert didn't appear to be perturbed by that, Izuku and Kyoka could have sworn they heard a small, irritated groan. Momo placed a hand over her chest. And once I get home, I'll be sure to ask my father about those warehouses for. The raven-haired heiress' eyes widened substantially as she quickly pulled out her phone, checking exactly what time it was. Much to her shock and horror, it was 9:30. Oh no, it's almost 10 o'clock. Izuku, Kyoka and Mei all gasped as well, the three of them beginning to panic. Crap, crap, crap. Izuku shouted. We are in so much trouble. Whoa, slow down guys. Sunstreaker lowered himself down and raised hand, hoping to calm them down. What exactly is the matter here? Strongarm raised an eyerage at the teens. Have you broken some sort of law? Not yet, Kyoka denied, but our parents are going to be totally steamed if we don't make it back in time for curfew. Sideswipe raised an eyerage, tilting his head a bit. You guys have a time limit to get home. PSH, that's lame. Optimus, however, nodded in understanding. Human customs. I had not realized. He glanced over to the city speaker standing by his side, Windblade, we need to get the children back to their homes as soon as possible. Would you be able to help in this matter? Of course, Optimus. Windblade confirmed before turning to the teens, giving them a wink. Just tell me where you kids live and I'll make sure you guys all get back home in time. Kyoka and IB both live in the city, Izuku said as he pointed in Musudafu's direction. So EW won't be needing too much help. Kyoka set her sights up to Bumblebee with a grin. Though B taking us home would be appreciated. B buzzed happily before giving a thumbs up, gladly accepting the proposition. I live over in Aichi Prefecture, Momo explained, still visibly panicked. It's not too far away, but I still don't think I'll make it. And I live in Kyoto, which is super far. Mei went on. I definitely won't make it in time. Hey, that's what you two think. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Windblade transformed into her jet mode, opening her cockpit for both Mei and Momo to climb into. Hop in. When she received a pair of shocked faces in response, Windblade was quick to reassure the two girls. Don't worry, my cockpit has a special air pressure regulator. You two won't even need pressure suits up there, so feel free to jump in. Momo and Mei both eyed each other wearily, before shrugging at the same time. Well, if it'll get us home faster, the raven-haired beauty turned to Izuku and Kyoka, bowing her head toward them. Well, I think it's safe to say that this day didn't go quite as expected, but I'm still grateful that I was here for all of this. Thank you for letting me in on your secret. Kyoka sent Momo a wave. Ah, don't mention it. We're glad to have you along, Yao Momo. Yeah, me too, Mei exclaimed. I don't know how much sleep I'll get, but I'm telling ya, I'm hyped for whatever happens next. Hey, why yeah, right. Izuku agreed. Well, I'm sure we'll see each other tomorrow at school, for sure. The Greenette moved his gaze over to his mentor and bowed to him. And thank you for your help as well, All Might. If you hadn't gotten here, well. Say no more, young Midoriya. All Might set his hand on his protégé's shoulder, his smile as bright as ever. You four were just as big of a help today as I was, remember. And I'm sure that you will be in the future as well. But for now, it's time for you all to get some well-deserved rest. After all, you have quite the day ahead of you tomorrow at UA, I'm sure. Izuku bowed his head one final time. Alright, of course. See you tomorrow. All Might saluted Izuku before doing the same to Optimus. Well, I must be off. It has certainly been a pleasure to fight alongside you, Optimus Prime. I look forward to working with you even more going forward, for sure. Likewise, All Might. Prime reciprocated the gesture. Take care. With that, All Might leapt up into the air with a mighty bound, the number one hero practically flying all the way back to Musudafu. As he did, Mei and Momo both made their way toward Windblade while Izuku and Kyoka entered Bumblebee, who had just transformed into his VW Beetle mode as well. After everyone was all set and ready to go, Optimus approached Windblade and Bumblebee. Once you drop the children off, reconvene with us back at Sector 7's base. We will need all the help we can get to disassemble that ground bridge. We read you loud and clear, Optimus. Windblade affirmed. We'll be there. Excellent. Prime stood tall as he raised a fist, his focus going back to the rest of his team. Now, I believe there is only one thing left to say. Autobots, transform and roll out. Oh man, how I've missed hearing that. Jazz said before he transformed. You heard the big bot, gang. Let's hit the road. In no time at all of the Autobots were in their vehicle modes, with the Sector 7 agents returning to their helicopter and taking off. The caravan of Cybertronians all made their way toward the compound's exit, with Bumblebee and Windblade heading off in separate directions while the Autobots headed north, following the helicopter back to Sector 7's base. As they drove off back to Musudafu, however, Izuku couldn't help but think to himself, man, I'm not even a fully fledged hero yet and I've already gotten into a pretty big adventure. He set his sights over to Kyoka and smiled to her, which she was more than happy to return. So, you ready for whatever comes next? Kyoka smirked and nudged Izuku's shoulder with her own. So long as you're in it all the way, then I am, too. Izuku couldn't help but blush at that. Hey, good to hear. The next morning had been a bit of a hectic one. It was evident that the entire city was still abuzz with what had happened the night before, especially since there were a bunch of repair crews at the scenes of the crashes. As a result, traffic had been more hectic than usual, but Izuku and Kyoka had still managed to make it in time thanks to Bumblebee's expert driving. With his holoform activated in the front seat, Bumblebee pulled up to the curb in front of UA. Hi, letting Izuku and Kyoka out with just enough time before the first bell. Thanks for the ride, B. Kyoka grinned, with Brian giving the duo a thumbs up. The perplet faced her green-haired best friend and quirked a brow. So, what do ya think we're in for today, Green Bean? I don't know. Izuku shrugged. C could be anything really. He glanced over to his side briefly, but then did a double take when he saw a familiar car come rolling down the road toward them. Ah, Kyoka. Izuku pointed over Kyoka's shoulder and the girl turned around, her jaw going slack at what she saw. Oh, well, ain't that interesting. Coming down the street was the pink and white Lotus Elise that was RC's alt mode. And how were they sure of this fact? Because the moment she pulled over to the curb, both Momo and Mei climbed out the back seat, the two girls thanking the driver. Kyoka and Izuku strolled up to them, with Bumblebee rolling up by their side. Hey, didn't expect to see you two rolling up in style this morning. Oh, good morning, Kyoka. Momo greeted. Yes, we were honestly quite surprised ourselves. We both woke up with RC outside our houses. Mei went on, and she offered us a ride here. She then raised her hand. And I was with her when she picked up Momo. Did you know her house is the size of an American football field? Oh, it is not. Momo insisted before glancing off to the side. More like 2 baseball fields. The group all gave a laugh before the pink-haired holoform in the Lotus front seat gave Izuku and Kyoka a wink. Windblade was kind enough to give me the location of their homes from when she dropped them off last night. Thought I'd come out and see just what Earth had to offer. Well, that's cool. Izuku stuttered. Gee, guess it does make sense that you'd want to check out your new, home. RC finished, giving Izuku a smile. This planet, it's our home now. And we're going to do whatever is necessary to protect it. ZRKT, guaranteed. Bumblebee said through a radio ad. However, before the conversation could go any further, Midoriya, Kyoka, Yaomomo, the 3-1A students and Mei all turned around to see none other than Ochako and Tenya jogging up toward them at great speed, the duo coming to a halt directly in front of their classmates. Ochako's eyes were filled with intensity as she spoke. You won't believe what we saw last night in the city. It was amazing. It was incredible. It was. Kyoka raised a hand to the brunette. Whoa, slow down there, Chaco. What did you see? What did we see? Tenya echoed with a disbelieving tone. Have you not seen the state that the city is in? Have you not been paying attention to the news? As always, the eccentric young man began doing his signature stiff arm movements. A meteor shower landed directly onto the city in several different locations. And we saw one land right near our train terminal. Out the corner of his eye, Tenya suddenly caught sight of a familiar car, which made him gasp and point to it. Ah, and you were there as well. The pink-haired holoform's eyes widened before putting on a quick smile. Oh, hi again. Didn't expect to see you two here. You're the woman we saw last night near the crash site. Ochako exclaimed. What are you doing here? Izuku and Kyoka all exchanged nervous faces, but apparently, RC and Momo were one step ahead of them. Wait, you were there last night, Sadie? Momo asked the holoform, feigning shock. Why didn't you tell me? RC, or Sadie, as her holoform was apparently called, gave Momo a sympathetic face. Because I didn't want you to worry about me, of course. You think I would just tell you that I nearly got crushed by a meteor the moment I arrived in Japan? Momo sighed and placed hand to her forehead. We'll talk about that later. She turned to Ochako and Tenya and explained. You see, guys, that over there is Sadie. She's a family friend from America who just arrived here. She's staying with me and my family for a while. Ochako blinked before sending a bright smile to Sadie. Oh, I see. She gave the girl a bow. In that case, it's nice to meet you. Indeed, a pleasure. Tenya bowed as well. Sadie gave them a wave. Same here. Glad to see you kids stayed out of trouble, by the way. She nudged her head toward the school. Now go on, you guys need to get to class and I need to get to a meeting in a little bit. Tenya's head snapped up to the clock in front of the school and he immediately began to panic, seeing that they only had 5 minutes to get to class. Oh my goodness, you're right. Come everyone, we must. Oh. The moment he had gone to start sprinting to the front door, Tenya stopped himself from running right into another young lady who he hadn't noticed before, one with pink dreadlocks and rather unique eyes. Oh, that was close. Tenya bowed quickly to her. My sincerest apologies for almost running you over. May blinked at the sudden bow, but quickly pardoned him with a smile and a wave. Ah, no biggie. Honestly, I'm right there with ya, Mr. Clean Cut. She picked up her book bag full of junk and spare parts and set her sights right for the door. These babies ain't gonna build themselves after all. Ah, part of the support group, I see. Tenya nodded. And I can see your passion for it is great. Very admirable. He waved to everyone else as he and May sprinted for the door. Come everyone. The lessons aren't going to learn themselves. The 3 girls and Izuku all stared after the two in disbelief, with Kyoka muttering, wow, how the hell did they get on the same page that fast? No clue. Izuku said before shaking his head. But he's got a point. See, come on guys, I have AF feeling that things are gonna be pretty important today. With that, the Greenette, Kyoka, Momo and Ochako followed after the duo, but not before the former 3 sent one last look back to RC and Bumblebee. The 2 disguised Autobots sent a pair of thumbs up toward the 3 as they left, with the humans waving back all the while. Once they were gone, though, RC nudged her head toward the yellow beetle. Hey, B. She lifted up a small paper in her holoform hand. Momo asked her family about one of those abandoned warehouses and she thinks this one a bit south from here is the perfect one. Prime and the others should be heading there now, so once school gets out, let's bring the gang there, huh? Bumblebee quickly agreed and the 2 Autobots rolled off, taking a quick tour of the city as they waited for the school day to be over. Meanwhile, at said abandoned warehouse a few miles out from a town called Korusan, Optimus Prime pulled up and stopped in front of it, with the rest of the Autobots pulling to a halt alongside him. Attached to his trailer hitch, there was a large, flatbed trailer that was covered in a massive tarp, one which held the disassembled ground bridge underneath it. He unhooked the trailer as Bulkhead and Strongarm held it up for him, allowing the Autobot leader to transform and set his optics out over the landscape. The warehouse itself was quite sizable, and if what Momo had said was correct, it should be big enough to hold all of them, the ground bridge, as well as whatever equipment they would be getting from Sector 7's base. However, the location was what truly mattered. They had been settled with beachfront property, as Momo had called it, the ocean serving as a backdrop for the whole place. What's more, there were large trees that blocked the view of the main road, and thus, no drivers who might be passing by would be able to see them. And even better, the place was a private property, so no one would even think to come down here in the first place. Overall, it was perfect. Still, as he gazed out over the ocean, taking in the natural beauty as the sun hit the waves, Optimus couldn't help but reflect on the events that had brought them to this point, and it was here that he decided that now was as good a time as any to send a message. After 300 stellar cycles of waiting, our search for the Ark can finally get underway. The Prime said in his mind, composing his thoughts as his optics settled onto his team of Autobots. And time and patience have yielded yet another reward, a new world to call home. We live among its people now, hiding in plain sight. But watching over them in secret. Waiting, protecting. And, with the help of our new secretive allies, this world's greatest hero, and our 4 young friends, we may just be able to accomplish our mission. His optics trailed back toward the ocean, though his gaze was firmly toward the sky. I have witnessed their capacity for courage, as well as how great their powers truly are compared to their size. In that sense, though we are worlds apart, like us, there is more to them than meets the eye. He placed his hands on his hips as he made his conclusion. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message to any surviving Autobots taking refuge among the stars. We are here, we are waiting. And it's the end of Season 1 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe.